Imagine a world without names, without borders, without lines dividing land and sea. A world that had no direction, where the sun did not rise in the east, but from a place that language had not yet learned to name. It was a silent world, but not empty, for every stone, every gust of wind, and every shadow remembered something older than time itself. This is where our journey begins, in the space between memory and impossibility. Beneath the dark, deep oceans of today lies a continent that once breathed. There were rivers that flowed across plains, now living only in the murmurs of the sea. A world before maps, before latitude and longitude, before humanity felt the need to name something to make it theirs. Tonight, you don't need to understand, just breathe slowly. And let the story carry you like a current toward a time that had no history. Picture the sea calm and flat, its surface like a sheet of stone glass. Beneath it, ancient land sleeps in the silence of millennia. No ships, no engines, only slow-moving currents that feel like the breath of an unseen world. If you listen closely enough, you might hear something vibrating from the depths. An echo from before the first human learned to say the word Earth. No map records that continent's shape. No archive keeps its shoreline. But sometimes, when waves strike the ocean's stones, you can hear the remnants of lines once carved by primeval rivers, now buried under salt water. Modern humans call it the lost world, but perhaps that word is not quite right. The world was never truly lost, only hidden beneath layers of time we can no longer feel. Like a breath held too long, it waits for someone to rediscover it. An archaeologist once said that if the oceans suddenly receded, the earth would unfold like a map folded for ages, revealing grooves yet unread. Mountains that are now islands would stand connected, and valleys beneath the sea would appear as ancient roads to forgotten lands. Perhaps tonight, we can imagine it together slowly, patiently. Every time humans draw a new map, they are, in truth, remembering. The lines are not inventions, but echoes of something that once existed. The first map was never drawn by hand, but etched by time itself through currents. Through the shadows of mountains, through the flight paths of birds tracing the same patterns for thousands of years. Before ink, there was stone that remembered. Before compasses, there was starlight showing the way home. The world before names was a world that knew itself without needing to be called. No nations, no borders, only an awareness that everything was connected by the same breath. The night deepens, and the sea we imagine becomes like dark glass reflecting memory. Beneath it, stone cities still stand, buried in mud and coral. They never collapsed, they merely slept, waiting for human eyes that could see, not with light, but with stillness. Perhaps you can imagine the paths walked by the first humans who gazed at the sky without knowing the names of stars. How their hands touched the same stones that now rest beneath the sea, and how each of their steps left traces that time later swallowed. The world before maps did not need directions, for everything still recognized each other without words. An unrecorded year, perhaps before numbers knew themselves as measures, before time was bound into calendars and seasons. At some point between two forgotten ages, the earth exhaled deeply. The sea slowly withdrew from its edges, revealing vast valleys gleaming like wet metal skin. Clouds hung low, heavy with mist carrying the scent of iron and salt rain. There, beneath a nameless gray sky, stretched a land that would one day vanish completely. There were no humans. Perhaps there were, though they did not look like humans now. Perhaps they walked without shadows. Perhaps they spoke without sound. What is certain is that the earth remembered their steps like an open book whose pages were written by wind and stone. This place is recorded on no atlas. It lies neither beneath the equator nor above it. It exists somewhere in between, in a place that might once have been called the heart of the world. Modern scientists guess it to be in what is now the Indian Ocean, or where two great tectonic plates still meet and move. Yet no map can prove its existence. Whenever they try to draw its boundary, the boundary shifts, as if the earth itself refuses to be remembered precisely. The surrounding sea changes color from deep blue to greenish, then to black like ink, dripping from a cosmic pen writing history in silence. Some stones found on the ocean floor bear strange patterns, as if they were once part of roads or structures deliberately arranged. Their lines are too straight to be natural, yet too broken to be artificial. Some say they are remnants of an ancient city lost in a single long night. Others call them the play of nature and current. Yet among the coral fragments, faint carvings remain symbols unlike any letters of the modern world. These symbols repeat in the same pattern across several distant locations, as if there once existed a language spoken not by humans, but by beings who thought in waves and light. The Earth's condition then was utterly different. Rain did not fall as it does now, but drifted down as thick mist, descending slowly and covering everything beneath it. Ancient mountains exhaled gentle smoke that formed veils across the horizon. Between cracks in stone, water flowed, carrying metallic particles from within the earth, shimmering faintly where sunlight touched. There was no summer or winter, only slow variations of light. Everything moved to a rhythm too calm to be called time. Modern scholars call that era prehistory, yet the word feels far too simple to describe the depth of its silence. The earth was young yet wise, as though waking from a long dream. In some places, layers of stone reveal footprints of creatures with forms unknown. The prints are large but light, as if the beings never truly touched the ground. There are no bones, no fossils, only traces that linger like shadows refusing to fade. From this, some have speculated that perhaps those beings were observers, not inhabitants. They came, they saw, and they left without a name, as if they knew the world was not yet ready to be remembered. Amid all this uncertainty, one thing was certain. The earth was alive. It breathed through ocean currents, pulsed through mountain tremors, and spoke through rain that fell like messages unread. Perhaps the first map of the world was born from the observations of those who followed that breath of earth, marking where the sea turned and where the land spoke in silence. There was no ink, no parchment, only a collective memory preserved in stone, sand, and water. That ancient world was not merely a place, but a consciousness mapping itself through rhythm, not through lines and symbols. There, hidden behind mist, history quietly began to turn, before the first name was ever spoken.
In that age, the world moved as though caught in an endless dream. The sun rose slowly behind the mist, not as a burning sphere of fire, but as a gentle light that felt like warm breath in the damp air. There were no bird calls, no crashing of waves against reefs, only the low hum of the earth vibrating beneath its surface. At times there was a faint cracking sound like stone softly speaking to itself, rearranging its veins to match the rhythm of a world that never stopped moving. In the valley that now lies beneath the sea, life unfolded in near-perfect silence. There were no cities, no walls, only vast plains with strange shapes resembling colossal paths. Some were made of black stone gleaming like obsidian, others of fine white sand that reflected pale light back to the sky. Upon them, something moved slowly, perhaps a creature, perhaps a machine, or perhaps both. Their form cannot be described completely, for no record has captured their true shape. Yet their shadows remain pressed into layers of rock, like silhouettes that refuse to fade even after time devoured everything. These beings, if they can be called that, did not live as humans do. They did not hunt, plant, or build homes. Their activities resembled purposeless rituals dancing among mist and stone, arranging small rocks into patterns across the ground near ancient rivers. Those patterns repeated in many places, and when viewed from above, they formed networks resembling maps. Not maps of land or sea, but maps of energy flow, as if they charted not space, but the feeling of the earth itself. In the middle of the plain stood one massive stone, spoken of in ancient legends whispered by tribes thousands of years later. It was called the Breath Stone. Its surface was smooth, yet within it pulsed a vibration like a heartbeat. Each time the fog descended, the stone glowed faintly blue, as though trying to communicate something beyond human understanding. Modern researchers interpret the story as a metaphor for geothermal or electromagnetic activity, but ancient lore says the Breath Stone was the center of all directions. From it, the ancient observers determined their lines of orientation, not by compass, but by intuition, born of unity with land and water. Night in that world was not dark. The sky shimmered with faint, pulsing light, as though the stars were not yet fully formed. Across the horizon, immense shadows sometimes drifted silently overhead. It is unclear whether they were clouds or something floating high above, watching like sentinels that never slept. The water below reflected their shapes in small ripples, which vanished as morning came. No one knows if those shadows were real or illusions of an atmosphere unlike today's. But in myths across many cultures, there are stories of sky beings who came before humankind watching, then leaving without trace. Some ancient stones found in what is now the Black Sea bear the same patterns as those discovered in the sunken plains of the Indian Ocean. Straight, lines stretch like roads, then curve and intersect at certain points, always aligned toward one direction, northeast. Geologists call them natural anomalies, yet independent archaeologists claim they are proof of a prehistoric navigation system not based on stars, but on Earth's magnetic field, as if they knew direction without seeing like fish finding their way upstream. Perhaps the first map was not a drawing, but a feeling carved into form and space. The world functioned as one vast body, and those who lived within it were its conscious cells. Every step, every movement, was not an act of exploration, but of balance between sea, air, and stone. There was no war, no ambition, only silence stretching long like a wordless prayer. Yet that silence was not empty. It was full of awareness flowing like a gentle current through the grains of sand. The world did not yet know time, but it already knew order. Within that order, history began to breathe not through words, but through the trembling of air. Among the great stones that survived from that age, faint patterns can be seen too orderly to be natural, yet too subtle to have been carved by hand. When evening light touches their surface at a certain angle, the shapes slowly emerge, visible only when the world is still. Like rain-formed ripples on sand, yet lasting for thousands of years, resisting water, time, and decay. The design resembles a web of fine veins, intersecting and merging at specific points, as though depicting a map not of land, but of the Earth's pulse itself. Scholars studying these stones call them primordial geometry, the earliest known form of mapping before symbols or numbers existed. They believe each line marks a change of energy beneath the surface magma flow, gas pressure, or mineral vibration. Others insist the patterns are not mere natural reactions, but expressions of the planet's own awareness, Earth righting itself, leaving behind the physical memory of a time when it had no eyes to see. Along the coastlines now submerged, parts of this stone map have reappeared due to tectonic shifts. When divers illuminate the rocks, they see layered lines that glow with different colors, as though time itself were shining from within. The deeper the light reaches, the clearer it becomes that these are not single carvings, but hundreds of strata arranged in sequence. It seems that each time the planet changed, through quakes, floods, or climatic cooling, it added a new layer, updating its own record. There are no words, no signatures, no signs of authorship. Yet in several sections, small indentations can be found resembling handprints, with fingers longer than those of modern humans. They are not large, but they always face the same direction, northeast, the direction ancient myths call the place of first light. Some claim the marks are caused by magnetic attraction forming hand-like mineral shapes, yet they appear too alive, too deliberate to be mere coincidence. At night beneath the sea, the map continues to glow faintly, not with phosphorus or reflected metal, but with light from within, born of geothermal heat deep inside the stone. Sometimes it pulses softly, like breathing, causing the water to tremble around it. Divers report hearing a low hum while near the stones, not machinery or current, but a resonance felt in the skull, as if the earth were whispering directly to their nerves. Some even claim the map feels alive, not as an object, but as a sleeping consciousness. On the surface, researchers aboard ships record anomalies. Compasses turn slowly without fixed direction, and pressure gauges fluctuate independently of the waves. At certain moments, the water becomes unnaturally calm, flat like glass, even as the wind continues to blow. Electronic devices flicker and fail, then resume as if nothing happened. All of it occurs whenever the evening sun strikes the site at a precise angle. They call it the silent hour, a time when the world above and the world below seem to beat in the same rhythm. Later discoveries reveal that similar patterns appear in the desert stones of Anatolia, thousands of kilometers away. The lines, when connected, form a great curve spanning half the ancient world. The arc passes through the regions now known as the Black Sea, the Caucasus, and the Altai Mountains, as if a global mapping system once existed long before humankind drew its first chart. No one knows who began it, or if it was ever completed, yet the lines never waver. They always point towards something now lost, something that once stood between the worlds of water and sky. Perhaps the map was not made by hands, but by awareness itself, a way for Earth to remember its own shape. In that silence, the stones beneath the sea still hold their patterns, waiting for the day when someone will learn to read them again. Not with eyes, nor with science, but with a feeling tuned to the breath that once pulsed from deep within the water.
From the depths of the Black Sea comes a recurring tale among divers and researchers. Story of a sound without source or direction, as if it rose from within the stone itself. It is not an explosion, not the roar of machinery, but a long vibration, like a tone-low calm, yet strong enough to be felt in the chest. Some call it the breath of the earth, others the echo of the map for whenever the sound appears. The layered surface of the stone seems to quiver softly, and its faint inner glow pulses in rhythm with the sound. There is no fixed pattern for its arrival. Sometimes it comes when the sea is perfectly still, sometimes during a storm. Yet it always brings with it a subtle shift in surrounding water pressure, like a slow heartbeat within a world long fallen silent. Scientists have tried to record the sound with underwater equipment. The results revealed frequencies too low for human ears, but when sped up, the recordings form a sequence resembling a simple melody. Every 7 minutes, the pattern repeats as if the earth were singing in a lost language. When compared to seismic vibrations from distant parts of the planet, the same rhythm was found at sites with similar rock structures, including deep within the Caucasus Mountains and the ancient valleys of the Altai. The researchers fell silent, realizing that these stones might not only record the Earth's shape, but also communicate with one another through inaudible frequencies. The old people of coastal villages near the site have their own version of the story. They say that on moonless nights, when the sea is glass and the wind stops breathing, one can hear a distant low song with no words. They believe it is a call from the sunken world, from ancestors who marked the way before the stars were born. Children are told never to stare at the sea when the sound arises, for if one listens too deeply, the ocean will return the gaze and slowly take one's awareness away. Another legend says that in the ancient age before the flood, there lived a group of guardians among the great stones. They were not human in our sense, but beings of both matter and light, tasked with protecting a map that should never be looked at too long. For the map did not merely show space, but time. Each line carved in the stone represented not a location, but a passage of eras. Whoever could read all the lines with an open heart would see every age past and future in a single, unbearable moment. When the great flood came, the guardians sank the map along with themselves, so no living creature would read it before the appointed time. In the notes of an unknown archaeologist, a passage describes a strange experience while examining the stones at 90 meters deep. After several minutes near the rock, his mind filled with images he could not explain a world map, yet wrong. Mountains stood in strange places, the seas had unfamiliar shapes, and the sky seemed lower. He felt as if he were watching the earth from another epoch. After surfacing, he dreamt for days of a city built of black stone, every street leading toward a single shining point. His notes stopped mid-sentence, and no further record of him was ever found. Modern scientists dismiss such stories as hallucinations caused by underwater pressure and lack of oxygen. Yet, curiously, recordings from separate oceans show the same frequency pattern, even when the devices are far apart. It is as if the ancient map were not confined to one place, but spread across the planet. It's connected by something older than land, deeper than the sea. Perhaps the map is the Earth's communication system, a way for the planet to speak to itself, to remember who it is long after humankind fades. The sound still appears from time to time, always bringing a strange calm. Those who hear it describe a peaceful familiarity, as though listening to a song they never learned yet, always knew. There is no fear, only the quiet realization that the world carries memories far older than history can reach. Beneath the water, the map continues to breathe. guarding a secret that should remain unspoken, for perhaps silence is the way the earth keeps dreaming of itself. On the remaining land that survived the ancient flood, life appeared simple, yet full of mystery. Like the slow breathing of a world not yet fully aware of itself. In the valleys filled with rivers unrecorded on any modern map, prehistoric humans walked slowly, carrying their daily burdens with a rhythm almost like part of a song never heard. They gathered food from roots and leaves found in the forest, fished from winding rivers, and lit fires to warm themselves when the cold mist descended from the mountains. Every action was performed with full awareness of their surroundings, each step and touch leaving an imprint on the earth, a silent record only readable by those born in that age. In the morning, when fog still clung low among the trees, the sounds of nature became clearer. The trickle of water, the whisper of wind, and the tread of human feet merged into a calming rhythm, guiding activities without words. Children played by the river, crafting boats from bark and large leaves, paddling them with curious hands while their eyes caught dancing reflections of light on the water. They learned to recognize weather changes by the wind's direction and the scent of wet earth, as if every element of the world spoke to them in a language understood only by the heart. Beyond daily life, objects held deeper meaning. Large stones left from previous civilizations bore faint carvings, circles and lines beyond the comprehension of the prehistoric humans, yet treated with reverence. Food was placed near them, fires were lit, or people simply sat beside them, gazing at forms that never changed over thousands of years. According to oral tradition, these stones were silent witnesses to a lost world, storing knowledge not to be read with the eyes, only felt with the heart. At night, the fire became the center of activity. People sat in circles, recounting tales passed down through generations. They spoke of animals that once roamed the forest, rivers that changed course, and mysterious sounds from the stones. Every word sounded calm, like a chant, and even without written records, each listener felt as if receiving lessons from time itself. Children slept near their parents, listening to stories that instilled curiosity and caution, slowly learning to navigate a world full of secrets without ever fully understanding it. The silence of night also bore witness to subtle changes almost imperceptible. Mist descending from the mountains settled on leaves, forming dew droplets that shimmered faintly in firelight. The wind carried the scent of earth and sea combined, signaling to the villagers that nature was moving, that the earth remained alive and aware of their presence. Occasionally sounds from beneath the ground could be heard gentle, vibrations that made the entire village feel something larger than their daily lives, a reminder that this world possessed a history far older and more complex than what ordinary human eyes could perceive. Each morning, the villagers began the same routines, yet with a different awareness. They swept paths, prepared hunting tools, and arranged their homes from wood and stone, all with the understanding that their lives were part of a greater rhythm. Rivers flowed endlessly, forests murmured with unseen life, and ancient stones remained silent, guarding the secrets of a lost world. Human and natural life intertwined in subtle yet undeniable ways, creating a silent symphony only felt by those fully present in every passing moment. As time passed, nature began to show subtler yet undeniable changes. The rivers flowing through the ancient valleys started reflecting a strange light, not from the sun or the moon, but from within the water itself. Its surface trembled gently, creating ripples that merged with the heartbeat of those observing. Fish swam, following the wave of light, their bodies reflecting a silver glow that moved like fragments of dreams beneath the water. The prehistoric humans gazed in awe and reverence, realizing that every element of nature now spoke in a manner subtler than ordinary sounds or movements. The passing wind carried not only the scent of earth and vegetation, but also an echo akin to a soft whisper, as if conveying knowledge forgotten since before memory existed. In the forest, leaves and branches began moving with a rhythm beyond explanation. They were not stirred by animals or humans, but by a force seemingly alive from within the earth itself. Light emanating from the rivers reflected on the leaves, forming delicate patterns that shifted with every passing second. Each step of humans under the forest canopy left faint trails of light that soon dissolved into the air, adding another layer of mystery to this seemingly ordinary world. Animals that normally hid began to appear, watching humans with eyes that seemed to hold knowledge far beyond comprehension. A lone wolf emerged at the end of a path, silent and calm, like a guardian of forgotten times, then slowly disappeared back into the forest's darkness without a sound. On the hills, stones that had long remained still now revealed faint lines that slowly moved, as if an ancient map sought to speak again. These lines merged with shadows from the sun and morning mist, forming symbols unreadable by the mind, only felt. The village elders, who had lived many decades, gazed upon the stones and sensed something familiar yet foreign, like memories they could not place into words. They began placing hunting tools, food, and fire near these stones, as if honoring a map never recorded by humans, but preserved within the world itself. Nightfall brought further change. Light reflecting from rivers and stones spread into the air, forming a thin, luminous layer that clung to human and animal skin. Children playing by the river moved cautiously, sensing a new layer between their world and something greater. They laughed softly, but the laughter sounded like echoes from the past, blending with the sounds of nature long unheard. An old woman sat near the fire, her eyes fixed on the stones, and rivers, as if reading a story translatable only by a soul attuned to the earth's rhythm. Sounds from the ground began to be heard, gentle yet repetitive vibrations like the world's pulse slowly emerging to the surface. People pressed their palms to the soil, feeling the rhythm penetrate their bones, evoking sensations both strange and comforting. Light from the river and stones absorbed into the ground, then rose again as glowing particles swirling in the air. No one feared. All felt they were part of something far greater, uniting humans, animals, and nature into the same rhythm. They began to learn to read these signs. Mist, light, Earth's vibrations, and the movement of animals were not mere phenomena, but the language of the world itself. Prehistoric humans developed ways to interact with nature, not through words or tools, but through full awareness of its hidden rhythm. Every breath became part of the symphony, and every step rewrote history never inscribed on stone or leaf. The world became a place where the real and the forgotten touched, where humans learned to navigate between what could be seen and what could only be felt. As the night deepened, signs from before memory became increasingly clear. The mist descending from the ancient mountains no longer merely covered the valleys, but moved like a slow stream with its own intent. It revealed surfaces of the earth that had been hidden, displaying lines forming vast patterns incomprehensible in ordinary words. Those patterns shimmered faintly under starlight that seemed to adjust itself to the rhythm of the earth. Every observer felt more than awe. They felt recognition, as if the world itself was looking back at them and acknowledging their presence as part of a history far broader than their own. The prehistoric humans, initially fearful of the mist that moved like a living creature, began to sense it as something friendly. They touched the soil emerging from the mist, and each moment seemed to teach them how to read the ancient traces inscribed in stone and dust. In the still night, the sounds of nature spoke more clearly. The trickle of the ancient rivers sounded like tones forming a language unknown yet familiar. Nightbirds joined in these tones, and other nocturnal creatures adjusted their movements. As if the entire natural world had united in a symphony invisible to ordinary human eyes. At the lakeside, the water's surface now reflected the misty light falling from the sky. Each ripple carried images faintly visible, shadows of the past that once inhabited this earth. Some claimed to see submerged cities, towers, and winding streets. Creatures walking among the houses, all appearing as reflections of a world long vanished. Children stood frozen, and adults felt that the world they knew was merely a thin layer atop an older, more complex reality. In that silence, every breath they drew felt like inhaling history itself. And their bodies began to resonate with a rhythm far greater than ordinary heartbeat. In the forest, trees took on clearer forms. Leaves glowed, and trunks appeared to tremble with the flow of light from sky and earth. Every creature moving in the forest left trails of light invisible during the day, but vivid at night for those who looked with open hearts. The wind through the branches sounded like an ancient song, conveying lost histories and reminding humans that they were heirs to something far older than comprehension. Gradually, human consciousness itself began to shift. They felt a connection with the earth, water, and surrounding light not merely as observers, but as integral parts of nature itself. Fear and doubt faded, replaced by profound calm. As if understanding that the world was greater than any individual or personal history. Every movement became part of the universal symphony, and every breath seemed to rewrite humanity's relationship with the earth, with the creatures that once lived within it, and with the ancient light now present as a gentle guide. In that almost sacred silence, people began to perceive that the symbols appearing on stones, mist, and water surfaces were not random forms. They were messages, or perhaps invitations, to remember and comprehend humanity's connection to an older world. Those patterns could not be translated into words, but could be felt through vibrations, light, and movement. They realized they were recipients of messages from a lost era. And that night became a moment when humans began learning to interpret the language of nature older than recorded history. In the sky, stars seemed to bow, aligning with patterns emerging on Earth. Their light merged with mist, trees, and rivers, creating a landscape more alive than any world they had known. Even ancient stones appeared to tremble slightly, acknowledging human presence and the ancient light. No words were spoken, only a collective awareness gradually growing that this world was a living unity and that humans were but a part. Now beginning to learn the rhythm older than time itself. At the edge of an unreal dawn, humans began to sense the past hidden within the light and mist. Time seemed to lose its direction. Seconds and minutes were no longer relevant, leaving only the feeling that the world pulsed with a rhythm older than recorded history. Every person gazing into the mist felt shadows of ancient lives, lost sounds, and the scent of earth and water that had flowed thousands of years before their birth. The prehistoric rivers reflected a light that came not from the sun or moon, but from the earth's core, and humans began to realize they stood upon traces walked by beings now existing only in the planet's memory. In the valleys, the mist swirled slowly, revealing ruins hidden beneath soil and grass. Stone pillars, half-destroyed walls, and streets resembling ancient carvings appeared briefly before being swallowed again by the mist, as if wanting to show without fully revealing. Children watched with wide eyes, sensing something they could not name, a strange yet comforting familiarity. Adults felt a subtle vibration in their chests, as if the world whispered long-lost secrets. And every breath became part of an endless dance of time, connecting the present to millions of years before history began. At the lakeside, the water's surface seemed alive. Reflections of the mist mirrored not only the sky or mountains, but fragments of the past. Moving creatures among ruins, lost villages, and light that never extinguished. Some claimed to see faces resembling their own, yet different, like mirrors from the past greeting the present. Anyone staring into the lake felt the pulse of life once lost and now returning through light and mist. As if the universe wanted to teach them to see the world without the constraints of names, time, or space. Animals emerging from the forest appeared transformed. Deer, wolves, and nocturnal birds carried faint auras of light, tracing their movements. Their steps left no ordinary prints, but fleeting trails of luminous patterns, appearing like an ancient language. Their sounds transformed into gentle songs, tones floating in the air, blending with the swirling mist and light in the valley. Humans realized they were not passive observers. Every motion and breath influenced the rhythm of nature around them, a rhythm that reshaped the connection between humanity, Earth, and history that had never been recorded. In the sky, stars began to display colors never seen before. Neither blue, white, nor red, but something between metallic light and mist, colors seemingly emerging from the very core of nature. The light reflected on the water, on leaves penetrated the mist and touched humans softly, making them feel the world as whole and alive. Some closed their eyes to absorb it, and upon opening them again, their surroundings appeared different, more alive, more fragile, yet filled with unspeakable wonder. Gradually, the boundary between the present and the ancient past began to fade. People realized they stood not only on the earth they knew, but on layers of time accumulated over thousands of generations. Every stone, every drop of water, every leaf carried history, unreadable in words, yet felt through the heart and senses. Light and mist were not mere natural phenomena, but bridges connecting them to the forgotten past, to lost life, and to the awareness that the world was far older than they had ever imagined. In that almost eternal night, humans realized one truth. They were not merely witnesses to history, but part of it. Every moment became an opportunity to remember, feel, and connect with a world greater than comprehension. The boundary between the real and the remembered vanished, leaving a sweet melancholy, like sleeping between a living world and a lost world, knowing both merged within the same breath. The descending mist grew thicker, and everyone stepping into the valley felt as if they were walking atop memories left in the earth thousands of years before names were given to anything. The remaining buildings, though collapsed, radiated a gentle and eternal presence, like houses that remained alive in the memories of people who had never existed. Each step on the wet ground left marks that could not be erased, not by human feet nor rain, because those marks were traces of memory, pulsing softly beneath layers of soil, waiting to be recognized. Children walking ahead saw shadows of people from the past slipping among the ruins, not frightening, but inviting curiosity and calm. Adults felt a subtle vibration in their chests, as if the world whispered long-lost secrets. And each breath became part of the endless dance of time, connecting the present to millions of years before history began. At the riverside, the water, now resembling a prehistoric artery, flowed slowly, reflecting light from the mist and from within the earth itself. People gazed into the surface and could almost see history moving within it. Boats that once passed, vanished marketplaces, bargaining voices now only echoing through layers of the earth's memory. Anyone looking into the water felt the same pulse within their chests, as if their blood now merged with the heartbeat of the earth and the lost history. The sensation could not be explained, yet each breath reinforced the feeling that they were not passive observers, but part of a story larger than themselves. In the ancient trees, leaves trembled softly without wind. Light filtering through the mist created patterns on the ground, patterns resembling ancient symbols, a language unreadable in words yet understood by the heart. Each symbol pulsed in sync with human breath passing by, and with every moment the mist shifted, carrying fragments of lost history and culture, enveloping the valley in an aura of the past. People watched calmly, realizing they were touching not only soil and stone, but layers of consciousness that shaped the earth long before they existed. Creatures moving among the mist appeared different, though unchanged in form. They seemed clearer, more aware, as if understanding what was happening. A deer crossed the ruins with light steps, its eyes softly glowing, reflecting light from the earth's core. A nocturnal bird circled the valley, and the sound of its wings created vibrations that merged with the pulse of the mist. All creatures, human and animal alike, became part of an unseen symphony, their movements and breaths unified, creating harmony with history never written but still felt. Above, the mist thickened, gradually forming faint patterns resembling a lost map. The lines were not straight, nor geometric by human standards, but followed prehistoric rivers, mountains now submerged beneath oceans, and valleys now hidden. People realized that the map was not merely to be seen, but to be felt. touching their consciousness and opening the understanding that the world they occupied was just one layer among many, layered above and below time. Each line in the mist was a bridge to an unnamed past, and anyone walking among it seemed to traverse history with their own feet. Feeling the flow of civilizations that once existed and now remained only as echoes in the earth. Some people sat by the river, letting their hands touch the cold water. They felt fragments of history through that touch, hands from the ancient past that had once held the same stones, water, or soil. The scent of wet earth mingled with soft mist, bringing them to experiences that defied words. The feeling was not only human memory, but also the memory of the earth itself, history preserved in layers of soil, water, and light slowly piercing the mist. They understood that the mist was not merely a natural phenomenon, but a medium connecting them to all that had lived and left traces, now re-emerging to be remembered in the silence of the valley. In that nearly sacred silence, people began to speak in whispers, not to tell each other what they saw, but to convey feelings arising within their hearts. They shared experiences of seeing ancient forms, hearing faint sounds, and witnessing light piercing the mist. Each word spoken seemed to add a new layer to the collective experience, building a shared understanding that they were standing at the intersection of the real and the remembered, between the present and unrecorded history, where each breath became part of a narrative larger and eternal. People began to realize that the patterns forming in the mist and on the ground were not mere coincidence or plays of light. They followed ancient rivers, traces of lost trade routes, even sites of rituals once performed by civilizations not recorded in human history. Each trace, each line, seemed to wait to be recognized, brought to life by the human consciousness now present in the valley. Children, without being instructed, began to trace the patterns with their feet, walking slowly, following flows that seemed to guide them. Adults observing felt a profound understanding beyond explanation, as if the earth was teaching them a lost language, a language not formed by words but felt within. Among the ruins of stone buildings, light from the mist illuminated cracked surfaces overgrown with moss. Each fissure appeared alive, reflecting the history contained within, not just from the stones themselves, but from the people who once walked those paths, touched the walls, or left objects in the crevices. Light traced every crack, forming new patterns as it touched moss and rainwater trickling slowly. People realized they were not merely looking at ruins, but at experiences embedded in stone and soil. Memories now reanimated through light and their attention. At the forest's edge, fallen leaves formed patterns resembling unknown scripts or symbols. Each leaf seemed to have its place, and when the wind brushed them, the pattern shifted slowly, forming different shapes at each moment. People watched calmly, sensing the same rhythm within themselves. Patterns that appeared chaotic to human eyes actually followed an ancient logic, the laws of life that once guided nameless civilizations. They began to understand that everything, even the seemingly trivial, the falling of leaves or rustle of grass, was part of a larger narrative, part of an unwritten map, alive and pulsating within the earth itself. Meanwhile, the animals around the valley displayed subtle changes. A deer that had merely passed before now paused and looked at humans with deeper eyes, as if aware that they were beginning to understand part of the Earth's secret. Birds perched on branches began whistling tones resembling ancient ritual notes, perhaps once used to convey messages or summon nature spirits. Even passing insects seemed to move to inaudible rhythms, enhancing the sense that the entire environment was communicating with the humans present. Humans became part of this symphony of ancient life, not passive observers, but participants whose consciousness was now linked with the long-forgotten rhythm of the earth. People sat by the river, touching the gently flowing water, realizing that the current carried more than water. It carried traces of prehistoric life, energy stored in the earth for thousands of years, waiting to be rediscovered. Each drop touching the skin brought sensations difficult to describe, a blend of nostalgia and wonder. They understood that this river was not merely a flow of water, but a connection between a lost past and their own awareness. A place where human experience and earth converged in the quiet valley, soft and full of secrets. Amid the mist and patterns on the ground, humans began to imagine rituals performed by those who lived before recorded history. No written records existed, no tales preserved. Yet the patterns in the earth and mist seemed to guide them to a collective memory embedded in soil and stone. They envisioned nameless people dancing in the unrecorded night, arranging symbols with firelight or objects now lost, creating a world that now survived only as a faint shadow. This awareness made them feel as if they were learning the language of the earth long forgotten. And each step, each breath, became part of a silent but meaningful communication. Humans began to understand that the maps forming were not mere geography, but narratives of life. Rivers, hills, valleys, and ruins were words composing stories. Patterns were sentences, and mist and light were the way the world spoke to them. They felt that the world before memory had its own logic, and that awareness now emerged through them. Every step on the ground, every touch of stone, and every glance at the misty sky was an effort to read a map larger than mere physical space, a map of life itself, connecting humans with the earth and all that had ever lived within it. Humans began to feel the ancient rhythm flowing through the valley, a pulse inaudible to ordinary ears but felt throughout the body. Every step on the ground, every breath drawn, seemed aligned with the same pulse, one that had existed for thousands of generations before recorded history. Light from the mist danced to this rhythm, changing color and intensity as if singing a song only comprehensible to present consciousness. People stood in silence, realizing they were no longer mere observers, but part of a greater process, something connecting the present with the unnamed past. At the river's edge, water sparkled not just from the light piercing the mist, but because it carried ancient energy stored within its flow. People touched the water, feeling subtle vibrations creeping into their bones, as if the current wanted to speak. Each small ripple on the surface held memory. Stories from lost civilizations, not in words, but in sensations, forms that could be felt but not explained in human language. Children playing at the riverbank seemed to understand more than adults. They moved along the patterns, treading paths that guided them unknowingly, as if led by invisible hands connecting the present with the forgotten past. In the forest across the river, leaves trembled in the same rhythm, and birds began to sing tones harmonious, as if a lost orchestra of nature had returned. Misty light filtered through the tree branches, forming shifting patterns that mirrored the pulse of the earth. People began to understand that every living being, every stone, every leaf was part of a larger system. And these patterns were the language uniting all elements. They realized that prehistoric life followed simple yet unchanging laws, now returning through their own consciousness, gradually learning to read the earth's signs. Meanwhile, on the hillside, stone ruins that had once seemed meaningless began revealing their purpose. Each stone appeared placed with intention, and cracks that had seemed random now formed patterns to follow, like ritual paths or directional markers. People tried tracing these patterns, realizing they were not exploring empty space, but retracing paths once used by ancient humans to connect with the earth. With light, and with a collective consciousness spanning generations, each step produced subtle resonance. Sounds barely perceptible, yet enough to make soil and stone respond, forming a gentle symphony, only understandable by complete presence. In the sky, mist and light began forming slowly moving symbols, floating like unknown letters. These symbols were not writing, but seemed to function as bridges between humans and the ancient laws guiding life in the valley. They interacted with humans through light and sensation, not words. Everyone gazing at these symbols felt something understood within themselves, something beyond sight, touching the core of consciousness and creating a sense of connection inexplicable by logic. Some tried mimicking the symbols' movements with their hands, and the light responded, pulsing in rhythm. Others closed their eyes and felt vibrations within, as if receiving messages from the past. From those who had lived before history was recorded, the valley became a silent space of focus, where humans learned to listen to the earth's rhythm, to understand the hidden ancient laws. They realized that light, mist, rivers, forests, and all living beings were not mere natural phenomena, but part of a universal language connecting them to all life that had ever existed. Over time, human consciousness began merging with the patterns and rhythms of the valley. Every breath, every step, even every heartbeat, aligned with the ancient pulse flowing through earth, water, and air. Misty light softened, following their movements, uniting space and time into a single conscious experience. They no longer tried to understand or control, but allowed themselves to be carried by the rhythm of nature, merging with the map of prehistoric life now alive before their eyes. At the valley's base, the ruins of the ancient stone city began to emerge as the mist thinned. Stones that had once formed the foundations of tall buildings now lay scattered. Yet for eyes attuned to the earth's rhythm, these arrangements hinted at paths, spaces, and centers of activity that had once existed. Narrow streets formed intricate labyrinths, not to confuse, but to guide those sensitive to the ancient pulse toward the city's energy centers. In corners, remnants of walls engraved with faint symbols revealed connections between humans, light, and nature. These symbols were not mere decoration, but guides to reading a language no longer spoken, only felt. People began walking among the ruins, feeling the textures of the stones, rough and smooth, at once, as if the stones still retained the traces of hands that shaped them. Every touch produced subtle resonance echoing through the valley, making the ground tremble slightly and the misty light dance in rhythm. Children ran along invisible paths, following instincts akin to those of their ancestors thousands of years ago, while adults realized they must abandon ordinary logic, opening subtler senses to read this ancient city. At the city's center, an open square revealed a large spiral pattern formed from stones and sand. The pattern was not only visual, but also felt through the air, via gentle vibrations radiating through their bodies. People stood at the edge of the spiral, sensing the flow of energy that awakened them to the lost history. Misty light pierced the ruins, reflecting and forming temporary visual bridges, seemingly uniting present and past. They realized the city was not merely a set of buildings, but a map of life. An energy map preserved in material forms readable by those fully present. Some bent down, touching the soil and sand in the square, feeling patterned pulses as if the ground were speaking. Each vibration conveyed information not in words, but sensations and currents interpretable by an open body and mind. They began marking paths with stones or wood, following patterns that felt correct, not logical, but resonant internally. Slowly, the ancient city came alive in their perception, not as mere physical structures, but as a conscious entity flowing through human bodies and minds. In corners of the ruins, small pools of reflective water displayed shadows unlike the world above. At times, they revealed lost architecture, humans walking thousands of years ago, or luminous beings traversing the city silently. People understood these were not illusions, but another way for the ancient city to communicate, showing its history through light and reflection. They gazed, feeling part of a different time and space, connected to a civilization with no name, yet leaving traces and energies preserved within the earth. As they explored the ruins, the sounds of nature merged with the ancient city. Wind through broken walls produced long, harmonious tones. Leaves brushing together created echoes like ancient instruments. And water dripping from pools followed rhythms aligned with the earth's vibrations. Humans learned to listen not only with ears, but with their whole bodies, perceiving messages and histories encoded in energy and sound. Every step, breath, and moment became part of the symphony that revived a city otherwise lost. Gradually, they began to understand the prehistoric map hidden in the ruins. Streets, squares, symbols, and spiral patterns were not random. They formed a network connecting humans with nature and light, creating consciousness flowing through space and time. This ancient city taught them that before written history, there existed a universal language connecting all life, a map unseen by ordinary eyes but felt by fully present souls. Amid the ruins, humans stood in silence, absorbing knowledge without words, becoming part of that map, and realizing that the world before memory was not empty, but full of currents of consciousness awaiting rediscovery. The ancient river flowed slowly through the ruins, its surface glimmering like liquid glass, reflecting the misty light descending from the valley sky. The water was not cold as they expected, but warm and filled with subtle vibrations, as if each drop carried memories from thousands of years past. They followed its course, their feet touching slippery stones that seemed alive, reminding them that this river was not merely water, but a pathway guiding humans through unspoken history. Along its banks, glowing grass bowed gently, paying respect to each step that passed, and some small stones appeared to shift slowly, adjusting to the rhythm of human movement. Children ran along the river's edge, laughing softly as the light reflected in their faces, casting shadows that changed every second. Adults, however, bent down, touching the water with their palms, feeling currents of energy leading them toward a new awareness. Every contact with the river produced echoes felt throughout the body, like resonances awakening a collective memory of a world before humans named objects and places. They began to realize that this river was a living map, a flow of energy connecting ruins, symbols, and spirals in the ancient city. At certain bends, the water swirled into gentle vortices, forming patterns resembling the symbols on stones and walls. The patterns seemed alive, slowly shifting in response to human presence. As they walked, the river guided them, indicating directions without words, only through subtle pulls and changes in the light's flow. Each person sensed that following the river meant understanding history, not through books or words, but through direct experience and an open intuition. The river became a silent teacher, a map without markings, a path toward knowledge hidden within ruins and mist. Midway through the journey, they discovered a stone crevice that seemed to be waiting for them. From it, soft light shone onto the river's surface, forming a glowing path resembling lines on an ancient map. Children pointed at it with wide eyes, while adults felt a subtle pull in their chests, as if called to follow the path. Each step taken along the luminous line produced echoes in the ground and air, strengthening their connection to the ancient city and the river, carrying energies from the past. The stones along the riverbank sometimes shifted slowly, adjusting to human steps, forming bridges or pathways that were not permanent. At times, they had to wait for the stones to align, as if the ancient city itself was aware of their presence and willing to guide them along the correct route. Misty light reflecting on the water changed color continuously from soft blue to pale gold, then green like glowing moss, creating an atmosphere both calming and mysterious. Everyone sensed they were not merely explorers, but part of a history being revived by the ancient river. Along the route, they also discovered remnants of architecture, almost buried stone pillars, half-collapsed columns, and walls containing faint symbols. Yet the symbols now appeared alive when touched by the river's light, pulsing slowly and forming new patterns interacting with the humans present. There was a subtle awareness that the river was not merely a physical path, but a bearer of knowledge and consciousness, connecting every human step with the energy of the ancient city and the lost world. They learned to read the path, not with their eyes, but with all senses, feeling history and energy flowing through their bodies like a long dormant heartbeat. They began to understand that the map before the world was known was not made of symbols on paper or stone, but energy pathways flowing through earth, water, and air. This ancient river was a primary route, linking points that had once been centers of life, conveying the realization that the world before humans named everything was full of harmonious systems. By following its currents and luminous paths, humans felt they were no longer passive observers, but participants in the very process of knowledge. The ancient river guided them, teaching that history can be read through experience and intuition, not merely through words and numbers. Along the riverbanks, ancient symbols began to emerge from stone and soil, first faintly, then increasingly clear as humans approached. Each symbol pulsed slowly, as if breathing on its own, and seemed connected to one another through thin streams of light in the air, linking the stone surfaces with the river's flow. Children pointed one by one, attempting to touch them, and when their fingers made contact, the symbols were neither cold nor hard like stone, but warm and elastic, as if accepting human touch as part of their life. Adults observed with reverence, realizing that these symbols were not merely marks, but portals to a deeper understanding of the prehistoric world they had never known. Some symbols rotated slowly, forming spirals following the river's flow, reminding them that this river was not only a physical path, but also a channel of energy flowing throughout the region. Each rotation produced subtle echoes that traveled through earth and air, awakening sensations difficult to describe. People felt their awareness expanding, like a collective memory of an unrecorded past, giving the impression that they were touching something greater than themselves. The ancient river had become more than a waterway. It was the backbone of a living map, guiding each human step with an unseen, gentle rhythm. At certain points, the symbols formed networks resembling ancient cities or fortresses. Though they had never seen maps like this before, the networks seemed alive, moving slowly according to the energy flow from the river. They realized that the symbols and networks were not human creations, but traces of civilizations that history had never named. Every observer felt a connection to a distant past, to cities and people long gone, as if sharing breath and memory with those who had disappeared. The air along the riverbank shifted in color as the symbols pulsed from pale silver to soft gold, then to a faint green merging with the river's light. Particles of light clung to human skin, dancing to the rhythm of the symbols, as if every atom in their bodies interacted with the ancient energy flowing. There was no fear, only awe and calm, as if suspended between sleep and wakefulness, where reality and ancient memory met without boundaries. They understood that the symbols were a language requiring no words, a language speaking through light, vibration, and consciousness flowing from the river to the earth and into humans. Amid it all, a small child gazed at one of the largest symbols and whispered softly, "This is not just a path. They want us to know a greater place." Adults nodded slowly, without words, realizing the symbols indicated a center of energy far larger than they had imagined. The river, symbols, light, and air now formed a living network, giving subtle guidance that the prehistoric world had rhythm and structure waiting to be remembered by humans present in this moment. They walked along the path of symbols, following the increasingly strong flow of energy until reaching a deeper curve of the river. Here, the symbols formed a large circle integrated with the water's flow, and light from the river reflected into the air, creating softly pulsing, luminous pillars. Each pillar pulsed in rhythm with the heartbeat of the observers, creating a sensation that they were part of the ancient rhythm itself. No one spoke. all understood that this experience was direct communication with a long-lost world. Birds flew low over the pillars of light, but no song emerged, only long, resonant tones, like a prehistoric chant from an unknown age. The sound mixed with the river's murmur and the rustling particles of light in the air, forming a natural symphony that could only be felt, not described. Children laughed softly, adults bowed their heads, and all present felt deep connection with the symbols, the river, and the network of ancient energy now revealed. At that point, humans realized something fundamental. The symbols were not mere maps or signs, but manifestations of the prehistoric consciousness seeking to be known again. The river, light, earth, air, and every atom around them became part of a continuously flowing language, and humans only needed to open their senses to read, feel, and remember. They began to grasp that the world before names was a world living through energy and consciousness, and every step on this path was part of restoring that ancient memory. At the path's end, the symbols formed a vast spiral, like an eye observing the world from the lost age. Light from the river penetrated the spiral, casting slowly moving shadows, creating the illusion that the energy center was truly alive. Everyone stood in silence, realizing they had entered a domain larger than themselves, a space where humans, nature, and prehistoric energy interacted without boundaries. In that quiet, they felt the symbols not only indicated place, but also time, civilization, and consciousness flowing between the known world and the forgotten one. Humans continued following the pulsating path of symbols along the riverbank, each step bringing them closer to the hidden energy center within the valley. The ground beneath their feet was no longer rigid as usual, but supple and warm, as if accepting every step as part of a larger rhythm. Light particles clinging to their skin interacted with one another, forming subtle patterns in the air that guided direction without voice or instruction. They felt the flow of energy binding the river, the earth, the air, and their own bodies into a living whole. And their consciousness began to align with the ancient rhythm flowing through the valley. Along the valley edge, ancient trees looked unlike anything they had known. Their trunks glowed softly, leaves reflected light seemingly drawn from the river, and branches swayed in sync with the flowing vibration of the symbols. Some touched the bark and felt a pulse nearly like a heartbeat, not hard, not soft, but a reminder that the trees were part of the same living network. A gentle breeze carried unfamiliar scents, a mix of wet soil, burnt metal, and flowers unknown, keeping their senses alert yet calm. The energy path became clearer as they progressed through the valley. Symbols formed branching patterns, yet every branch remained connected to the main river flow, reminding them that this path was not merely physical, but metaphorical, a map of consciousness from the lost world. Each person felt they were reading something greater than themselves, something beyond ordinary sight or human language. Patterns of light shifted slowly in the air, following their steps, as if the ancient world was adjusting its form to allow understanding gradually. At a certain point, a large stone appeared in the center of the path, adorned with more complex, brighter symbols. People stopped, sensing its gravity not physical, but as if the energy center drew their consciousness. Children, usually playful, stood quietly, staring at the symbols with deep curiosity and reverence. Some traced the lines with their fingers, and the light responded, pulsing faster in rhythm with their movements, a subtle play between humans and the ancient world. The soft sound of the flowing river now merged with the faint echoes from the stone symbols, creating a harmony that spread through air and earth, forming the sensation of walking within a symphony not only heard but felt. No words could capture this experience, for human language was too rigid to contain such vibrant, ancient, and meaningful rhythm. Every breath became part of it. Every step added to the pulsing energy throughout the valley. Along the journey, some began to feel memories not their own, as if ancient recollections embedded in the earth pierced human consciousness. They saw shadows of lost cities, heard whispers not from anyone around them, and sensed the long-forgotten currents of life. This was no hallucination, they realized, because everyone felt it consistently, not depending on personal imagination, but arising from real energy flowing through the symbols and valley paths. As they neared the center, the symbol's light grew denser and warmer. The air trembled gently, and the ground beneath their feet adjusted to the rhythm of their steps. Their awareness expanded, no longer confined to body or mind. Merging with the stream of energy binding river, trees, soil, and every particle of air. They understood that the center of this ancient world was not merely a physical location, but a node of consciousness where the lost world and present humans met in pure energy form. Meanwhile, the luminous beings previously seen on the mountain appeared faintly along the valley edges, like shadows following humans without causing fear. They moved slowly, following the symbol stream but never ahead or behind, as if waiting for humans to reach a certain point before interacting. Their presence added reverence and calm, showing that this path was not merely a physical journey, but a journey of consciousness, linking humans to the greater ancient world beyond everyday life. At the final point before the center, all symbols merged into a massive pattern covering the ground and air above it. Light from the river, stones, air, and the ancient beings fused into a gentle radiance, spreading in all directions, creating the sensation that the valley itself breathed, lived, and was aware of their presence. No words were spoken. Only a profound sense of connection remained, an experience that altered the way they understood the world, time, and their place in this newly discovered ancient universe. At the center of the valley, humans felt the rhythm of energy intensify, not merely like the heartbeat of this world, but as the collective breath of all ancient worlds that had existed and were now lost. Every person who stepped onto the ground at the center experienced a different flow of memory, yet each was connected through the same vibration. They glimpsed sunken stone cities, rivers flowing toward unknown destinations, and ancient forests now preserved only within forgotten layers of time. The memories were not just images or sounds, but living sensations enveloping their entire bodies, like a gentle rain penetrating the skin and reawakening something long dormant. The energy flowing through the valley now appeared to form an invisible network. Nodes connecting stones, trees, rivers, and the beings present. Each human step within the center produced a resonance that revealed glimpses of other parts of the ancient world, as if they were walking upon a sheet of memory spread beneath their feet. Some bowed, feeling their footprints transform into glowing lines that reflected into the air, merging with the ground's symbol patterns to form new designs, suggesting that humans had become part of the ancient map. No sound could be heard, only a soft vibration radiating through the body. Some closed their eyes, letting the energy enter, feeling ancient rivers flow through their veins. Winds from distant valleys carrying unfamiliar freshness, and the ground beneath emanating gentle warmth that brought comfort and familiarity. Every second at the center felt timeless, as if humans had left ordinary chronology and entered another dimension where the ancient world and the present were united. In the air, particles of light danced along the increasingly dense energy waves. Faint forms emerged from the light shadows of lost cities, winding rivers, and lush forests appearing simultaneously, yet not overlapping, merging instead into a single vast consciousness. People felt that this energy center was not merely a physical place, but a collective repository of experiences, feelings, and memories of all ancient worlds that had existed. Every human there seemed able to read a language never spoken, understand a history never recorded, and sense lives long vanished. Meanwhile, the luminous beings lingering at the valley's edges slowly approached, not to frighten, but to merge with the center's energy. Their forms shifted to match human vibrations and the ground symbols, creating the sensation that humans in the ancient world knew and understood each other even before words or thought arose. The old woman, previously a bridge in the valley, now sat in the center with eyes open, observing the humans approaching, smiling as if to signal that they were all now part of a story greater than ordinary life. In another corner, a small child placed hands on the center's ground, and the airborne particles of light responded, tracing along the child's fingers and forming a temporary yet stunning glowing pattern. The child smiled, not fully understanding what was happening, but feeling something deep calm and wonder together, and the sensation spread to those around. Everyone now sensed they were no longer standing alone, but bound by the ancient energy flowing from the center. Every heartbeat, every breath becoming part of the larger pulse of the lost world. Time seemed to pause at the center. Someone moved a hand and saw lines of light follow the motion, forming symbolic paintings that hinted at the history of the ancient world. Those present understood that all they witnessed were fragments of the forgotten world. Yet the fragments were alive, interactive, and integrated with them. There was no fear, no desire to possess, only the gentle understanding that humans were recipients of ancient memory, not its creators or owners. As night fell over the valley, the center's light became denser, yet never dazzling. It was soft, warm, and enveloping for all present. Humans felt the presence of all the lost worlds, not just visually or audibly, but through their entire body and consciousness. They began to understand that the lost world was not truly gone. It was preserved, waiting for the moment when humans could perceive the correct rhythm and merge with its energy. As humans began to attune to the rhythm of energy at the valley's center, they realized something more than mere vision or sensation. The energy did not just envelop their bodies, but penetrated every cell, calming hidden tensions and washing away fears they had carried unknowingly for thousands of generations. Every breath, felt like the ancient air once inhaled by their ancestors, bringing back forgotten awareness. Their bodies moved unconsciously with the energy waves, their hands sensing the textures of the earth that seemed to hold its own history, and their feet tracing patterns emerging from the soil as if walking paths trodden by humans before time was recorded. The ancient energy also seemed to heal lost memories. Flashes of the past appeared not as words or images, but as sensations and scents embedded in the body. Some suddenly smelled the first rains, the aroma of freshly turned soil after ancient storms, and the scent of oceans that once swallowed lands now vanished. They understood that the lost world was not just cities and rivers, but experiences that shaped human bodies and minds from the beginning. This awareness flowed slowly, penetrating fragile memories and planting a warm sense of security, as if the earth itself was embracing them back to their origin. In the air, the light from particles dancing along the energy waves became softer, penetrating hair, skin, and clothing without leaving a visible trace. The light ignited long-forgotten memories in their hearts. Childhood games, laughter that had vanished, even tears once shed for unknown reasons. All of it now coexisted with the rhythm of the ancient energy, and everyone felt their bodies lightened, their minds clear, and their emotions deepen. There was a sense that this energy was not merely a natural phenomenon, but a bridge connecting lost generations with the present, allowing humans to understand themselves in ways previously impossible. People began to realize that this ancient energy was communicative not with words, but through sensations and shapes of light touching them. Someone looked to the side and saw lines of light reflecting from the hand of an elder, forming patterns that seemed to convey they were not alone. Everyone present felt the connection, like invisible knots binding them together through the same energy that had traversed millennia. They sensed unity with humans who had lived and died before history began recording, understanding that the essence of existence remained hidden within the pulse of this ancient energy. Around the center, animals that had been still now responded subtly. Deer, birds, and insects appeared to move in sync with the energy waves. A deer lowered its head, inhaling the air as if sensing the ground's vibrations, while birds formed patterns in the sky, following pulses of light moving through the air. All creatures seemed in the same harmony, with no predator, no prey, only a collective consciousness integrated with the center. It gave the impression that the valley had come alive again, not as a forgotten or dead place, but as awareness connecting humans, animals, and the earth itself. As night deepened, the light from the center gradually adjusted its intensity, soothing tired eyes and unsettled minds. Humans felt that time was no longer a straight line, but a surface to explore through consciousness. Some sat on the ground, touching tree roots and stones, feeling the energy flowing through them and returning to their bodies. The sensation was gentle, calming, and evoked the feeling that humans had found a place where they could remember, feel, and become part of a world greater than what they could see. They began communicating, but not with ordinary words. Their language was now emotions, gestures, and vibrations transmitted through gentle touch or glances. Everyone understood the same meaning, and this communication brought a peace never felt before. In the valley, humans were no longer merely observers of the world, but part of the living ancient map. Symbols moving and interacting with the energy that had existed long before their birth. Everyone realized this experience was not temporary. It planted something eternal within their bodies and minds, something that would remain even after they left the valley. As the night grew deeper, the energy at the valley center began to display visions unlike before. Soft light-formed shapes resembling the future, not in words or images, but in vibrations and sensations that could be felt throughout the body. Some felt paths they had never walked, rivers flowing in unknown directions, and trees growing in patterns strange yet familiar. The visions did not demand understanding, but offered a sense of possibility. Like pages of life slowly unfolding before their inner eyes. Each vision carried a distinct scent, sometimes like rain falling on an ancient desert, other times like wood burning on a moonless night. The people realized the energy was not merely radiating light or awakening memories. It also manifested human emotions previously unrecognized. Courage arose without reason, longing for something unremembered, and a sense of connection spanning time. Some felt the presence of ancestors not as spirits or shadows, but as sensations whispering that all human experiences, past and future, remained linked by the same pulse. The energy created a subtle dance between past, present, and future, allowing humans to feel the entire spectrum of their existence simultaneously. Among the visions, a normally quiet girl suddenly turned toward a point that appeared empty to others. She smiled as if witnessing something extraordinary, then held an elder's hand. When the energy touched their hands, patterns of light spread through their bodies, penetrating minds and feelings. They felt no fear, only fascination, realizing that each step they took would leave marks in history yet unwritten. The glimpses of the future did not demand choice or change, but offered the understanding that time is layered, and every moment is a seed of infinite possibilities. Objects around them began to resonate with the energy as well. Stones in the valley vibrated softly, emitting subtle tones that seemed to speak in an ancient musical language. The lake's water rippled in rhythm with the light's pulse, creating harmony that could be felt throughout the body. Leaves glowed, displaying light patterns that appeared to trace the journey of time itself, from birth to future possibilities yet to occur. All these phenomena gave the impression that nature and humans were communicating through a medium far deeper than words, via vibrations and light comprehensible only to open consciousness. Everyone in the valley now felt a silence unlike before. It was not emptiness, but full of untold potential and meaning. They sensed that what they saw was only a fraction of the energy spectrum, and the rest of the experience lay beyond limits accessible only through deeper awareness. They began to understand that humans were not merely observing the world, but part of this ancient map, and that the energy enveloping the valley was not just a natural phenomenon, but a reflection of possibilities, memories, and consciousness existing long before their birth. As night continued its curtain, the visions of the future appeared more frequently, sometimes as cities that had never existed, sometimes as rivers altering course and forming new valleys. The energy flowed among humans, animals, and plants, uniting all life in a gentle, eternal dance. No one tried to control it, they simply allowed themselves to be carried by the experience, realizing that all they witnessed was part of an ancient consciousness continually writing itself upon the earth, and that they too were part of a story larger than anything human hands could record. As the night deepened, the people in the valley began to realize that every movement they made, no matter how small, left traces of energy lingering in the air and soil. When a child looked back with a smile, a soft wave of light spread from their body, attaching to leaves and stones nearby before dissolving into the larger rhythm of the valley. A woman bending to touch the ground felt pulses that seemed to reach through her bones, providing awareness that anything touched or altered by humans remained inscribed within the Earth's flow of energy. Even their breaths, normally unnoticed, formed gentle vortices moving with the wind, carrying small stories from one place to another, as if narrating unwritten history to every being present. The energy arising from human action did not appear as bright light, but as subtle waves affecting the surrounding atmosphere. Plants responded by bending stems or leaves. Small stones vibrated softly, and water in the river traced new patterns with each human step. People slowly sensed that they were not mere witnesses to these phenomena, but active participants in the formation of the world. Every spoken word, shared smile, or even step left an impression that could be felt by those who came after, as if each action inscribed a new chapter in the valley's unseen history. An old man stood by the riverbank, gazing at the slow-moving water. Placing his hand on the surface, he felt vortices formed by the valley's inhabitants. He realized that the ripples were not just reflections of light, but records of the movements and intentions of humans present there. Children played nearby, laughing and running, unknowingly leaving energy trails in the air. Each laugh produced a subtle resonance, causing leaves to sway unnaturally and stones to vibrate in harmonious rhythm. This gave the sense that the world was not a passive place, but a living canvas responding to every conscious touch. In the center of the valley, the usually silent old woman walked slowly, extending her hands to the air. Light emanating from her body merged with the surrounding energy, forming a delicate network connecting trees, stones, rivers, and other living beings. Each movement created faint lines of light, imperceptible to the eyes, but tangible to all present. People began to understand that these patterns of energy were like a map recording their presence, traces that could not vanish even after the night ended or they left the valley. Animals nearby also began to show sensitivity to the energy. A deer crossing the meadow paused, its eyes dimly glowing as it followed the swirls of light, forming patterns in the air. Birds perched on branches emitted long tones, synchronizing with the rhythm of the energy, as if celebrating the human traces left behind. The wind shifted with the dance of subtle waves, carrying energy from one corner of the valley to another. Every living being, visible or hidden, now participated in a symphony of energy, creating a gentle yet powerful collective awareness. Humans started sensing a deeper connection. Their actions were not mere personal experiences, but part of an energy flow resonating through time. They felt the presence of future generations in every movement, understanding that their steps could become memories or inspiration for those yet to live. From this awareness arose a calm sense of responsibility, not burdensome or frightening, but a subtle urging to maintain the valley's rhythm so that the energy they left remained harmonious with nature. All of this happened without command or instruction. No one forced understanding or control. Only a consciousness gradually opening to accept that humans, nature, and the energy between them formed a network that continuously lived. Each step became part of a larger symphony, and each breath was a song connecting past, present, and future possibilities. The world in the valley was no longer divided into objects and observers. It had become a single consciousness, pulsing with living silence, full of potential. As the gentle dawn began to pierce the night's mist, the energy patterns left by humans started interacting with the ancient light that remained from the previous night. This light was unlike sunlight or artificial lamps. It was a subtle vibration, penetrating air and soil, merging with every human energy trace present. When a child danced across the field, each step triggered tiny whirls of light following their movements, forming chains that resembled miniature winding rivers among the grass. Those who observed this felt an unusual calm, as if the world were speaking in a language of light and motion that could only be felt, not explained. These light patterns then began to grow, moving through the air and attaching to stones, soil, and leaves. Every meeting between human energy and the ancient light created new forms. Sometimes soft spirals, sometimes delicate webs stretching between trees. The elders of the valley watched with quiet faces, realizing that they were witnessing not merely a visual play, but history being rewritten by nature and humans together. Some children tried to touch the light, and whenever their fingers made contact, its gentle waves spread in all directions like ripples in endless water. An old man who often wandered the forest noticed that the ancient light also responded to human intentions and emotions. When someone helped a friend or shared food with the hungry, the light would spin and intensify around them, reflecting warmth and gentleness that was hard to describe. This energy was not merely visual. It was a feeling that anyone present could sense, like subtle vibrations entering the chest and slowly spreading throughout the body, creating a profound sense of connection between humans and with the surrounding nature. By the riverbank, the water began reflecting the ancient light mingled with human energy, forming patterns resembling ancient maps never seen in any book. The patterns shifted, branched, and flowed, as if attempting to narrate lost history from the world before humans knew names. Before rivers had labels, before mountains were considered territorial boundaries, every movement of the wind or human foot influenced these patterns, animating them, as if the world was remembering itself through the interaction between humans and unseen ancient energy. Other creatures in the valley responded as well. A deer that normally walked heedlessly now paused, eyes following swirls of light in the air. Birds perched on trees adjusted their calls to the rhythm of the patterns, as if singing newly discovered songs of nature. Even the ants laboring on the ground moved in alignment with surface energy flows, showing that even the smallest life was touched by the symphony of energy and ancient light. In this gentle silence, humans began to realize that they were not mere parts of a static world, but participants in a moving collective consciousness. Every step, laugh, and touch had a lasting effect, forming patterns comprehensible only through feeling, not reason. The valley seemed like a living canvas where ancient light and human energy danced together, creating a beauty never recorded in history, yet leaving an indelible impression on every being present. Time began to feel slowed, measured not by the sun or clocks, but by changes in light and waves of energy across the valley. Each moment brought new surprises, new patterns, new interactions between humans, animals, soil, water, and the ancient light. People sat, stood, or walked quietly, aware that they were living in a moment that could never be repeated. The awareness was not frightening. Instead, it brought a deep sense of security and comfort, as if the world were embracing each soul present, teaching that every action holds far greater significance than what the eyes alone can see. As the day advanced without a clear sun, the patterns of light and energy that had formed began to show subtle signs of order. They no longer moved randomly, but began to form lines and curves resembling ancient symbols that existed long before humans understood writing. These symbols could not be comprehended by ordinary reason. They were felt more than seen, as if every twist and turn carried a message perceivable only by the heart and consciousness. People standing in the field felt a faint vibration within their chests, each symbol appearing to speak in a language long forgotten, a language from a world before the world existed. A usually quiet boy approached and touched one of the swirling lights. As his hand met the symbol, a warm wave spread through his body, causing a gentle shiver without fear. Around him, other symbols responded to the touch, forming chains that seemed to guide the eyes to certain areas, directing human attention to hidden patterns among the mist and grass. The elders watching felt something both familiar and strange, like recalling a dream that could not be fully remembered but left a profound impression. It was not only humans affected. Animals in the valley began to move more slowly, observing changes in air and soil in a nearly spiritual manner. A deer paused in the middle of the field, eyes fixed on the swirling symbols, then slowly bowed its head, as if understanding that the patterns were not merely a play of light, but something greater. Birds perched in trees adjusted their calls to the rhythm of the light, producing subtle harmonies like soft whispers from the past. Even the ants on the ground began to move along the lines of energy, forming tiny networks aligned with the symbols in the air. The old woman, long a witness to these phenomena, stood in the valley, eyes fixed on the evolving symbols. Her lips moved silently, and each movement seemed translated by the surrounding light, pulsing in sync with the forming symbols. Those nearby felt a gentle warmth flowing through their bodies, as if the symbols were connecting them to something larger than themselves. This connection could not be explained. It was not an ordinary relationship between humans and nature, but a direct interaction between human consciousness and an older, broader, and mysterious awareness. Over time, the symbols formed increasingly intricate patterns, sometimes resembling circles, sometimes branching like roots penetrating both soil and air simultaneously. The patterns appeared alive, not static, as if they possessed consciousness. Every human movement, every animal motion, and even passing wind influenced the symbols' forms. People began to realize that they were no longer passive observers. They were part of a symphony of ancient energy and light, rewriting the valley's history. The patterns told of times before written records, before maps, before names existed, when the world flowed freely and shaped itself. A gentle wind carried the scent of burnt metal and wildflowers, following the paths of the symbols in the air. Ancient light and human energy had now fully merged, forming a new layer of consciousness that could be felt, seen, and touched, though still difficult to describe in words. Everyone present sensed an unusual depth of time and space, as if each symbol was a key to remembering a lost world, a world before humans imposed limits, before names and history began to restrain nature. The valley became a place where past, present, and potential future converged in a gentle, poetic, and eternal dance of light. The symbols did not stop. They continued to grow, spiral, branch, and rotate, forming delicate networks connecting humans, animals, water, soil, and air. People began to understand that they were witnessing something larger than themselves, something beyond logic and reason, something speaking directly to the deepest part of human consciousness. Unknowingly, each breath, step, and movement became part of the story being created, a story that would not be recorded in books, yet would live on in the form of energy and light in the valley, linking past with present in an endless harmony. The symbols swirling in the air now emitted a warmer, softer, and calming light, as if trying to touch the deepest consciousness of every being in the valley. Those standing there felt something awaken within themselves, memories they had not realized existed, yet felt vivid and familiar. Some recalled unknown faces, places they had never visited, and events that occurred long before history was recorded. This was not an ordinary dream, but an experience that transcended time, drawing each individual into a space where past and present met in an almost mystical harmony. A usually quiet young man closed his eyes, feeling the symbols move through his body, following the flow of his blood and breath. In his mind appeared visions of ancient rivers cutting through the earth before the first cities arose, forests teeming with creatures now known only through fossils, and skies never charted on any map. Each symbol touched by his consciousness produced a subtle resonance, like a soft voice from a world long lost, still perceptible through the same energy waves now coursing through the valley. It was not only humans who felt this wave of memory. Animals around grew calmer, adjusting to the rhythm of symbols that slowly awakened collective awareness. A deer lay down in the grass, closing its eyes and breathing with the flow of energy, as if remembering it was part of a larger cycle of life. Birds perched on branches transformed their calls into long, resonant tones, creating a harmony that united all creatures in a new consciousness beyond language and words. Even insects and plants seemed to interact with this energy, leaves trembling gently, flowers closing and opening in rhythm with the symbols. In the midst of the valley, the old woman stood calmly, eyes fixed on the now softly glowing symbols. Her lips moved slowly, uttering words inaudible to ordinary ears, yet each seemed translated by the surrounding light. Those approaching felt a warm vibration in their chests, as if the words penetrated directly to their hearts, evoking feelings indescribable, yet seeming like long-hidden truths. Gradually, Every individual in the valley realized that this experience was not an illusion. The symbols were a bridge between humans and the consciousness of a lost world. A world before historical records, before maps and names constrained their understanding. The light emitted by the symbols now penetrated the ground, spreading through roots, stones, and flowing water in the valley. Every being touched by this light felt a soothing wave, bringing collective awareness deeper. Patterns forming in air and soil created a complex network connecting humans with animals, plants, and even stones that seemed to hold memory. The world appeared alive in a new consciousness, where all things were interconnected, and the distinction between reality and remembrance began to blur. A small child stood by the lake, eyes fixed on the water's surface, now reflecting the glowing symbols. He felt a world larger than himself, a consciousness not confined by space or time, where humans were merely a small part of a greater harmony. The water rippled gently, forming circles aligned with the flow of symbols in the air, as if nature itself remembered and danced alongside them. A gentle wind carried the scent of burnt metal and wildflowers, enveloping the valley in a quiet, peaceful, and mysteriously captivating atmosphere. This collective consciousness gradually merged with the breath of every being present. Each step, hand movement, or blink seemed to contribute to the broader energy pattern, adding new layers to the ever-evolving symbols. The valley became a space where memories of a lost world met current life, creating an experience that could not be written, only felt and intuitively remembered. People realized they were part of something far greater than themselves, something transcending time, connecting the ancient past with the present, fostering a consciousness that was gentle, peaceful, and profound. The symbols floating in the air began to merge, forming more complex and orderly patterns, as if composing a secret language of nature that humans had never understood. From the intersections of these luminous lines emerged shapes both familiar and alien. A map of the world before maps existed, ancient rivers flowing across lands now hidden beneath the sea mountains, that once stood tall, and forests cloaking unnamed continents. This pattern was not merely visual. It penetrated human consciousness, awakening a remembrance never before experienced. Each person gazing at it felt the lines move within their minds, seemingly remapping their perception of space, time, and existence. A middle-aged man who had traveled far north leaned forward, eyes following the flowing light, forming rivers and mountains unknown to him. He felt unrecorded history vibrating within, stories from a world before humans learned to write, when consciousness was transmitted only through memory and vision, not words or official symbols. In his mind, the ancient rivers flowed not with water, but with light, carrying life, memory, and sounds only perceivable by the heart, not the ears. The mountains in the symbol map pulsed gently, as if aware that human eyes now watched them. And in that awareness, they chose to tell their stories. Children standing by the lake gazed at the evolving pattern, feeling something stir within them, pure, gentle awe. They did not know they were seeing a map of a world that existed before names and boundaries separated humans from the earth. In their imagination, the glowing rivers became pathways for creatures now existing only in legends and dreams, while the light-layered mountains became fortresses for the lingering ancient consciousness. The ground beneath their feet trembled softly, conveying the subtle message that this world was not truly lost. It was merely waiting to be remembered through light and collective human memory. As the pattern grew, soft whispers emerged from the air, not sounds that could be translated into words, but resonances entering bones and nerves, making every being present feel the flow of ancient energy. The wind carried the scent of wet earth and burnt metal, reminding everyone that this was a living world, breathing through all its creatures. Some felt emotions beyond explanation, longing for places never visited, desire to comprehend something greater than themselves, and a sense of safety in knowing that the ancient world still existed, hidden beneath layers of time. Creatures in the valley adjusted to this energy. Animals stood still or moved gently, following the currents of light and sound now forming the ancient map. A deer stepped lightly through the flowing symbols, its fur glowing softly with reflected light, becoming part of the map itself. Birds ceased chirping and flew low, touching the luminous patterns with their wings. While fish in the lake appeared to swim along the light streaming through the water, creating luminous circles, merging with the aerial map. Nature seemed aware that its history was being read again. And in this awareness, the world chose to tell its story slowly, without coercion, in a gentle and calm rhythm. An old woman sat beneath an ancient tree, eyes fixed on the symbol map, now visible in both air and earth. She smiled, remembering that the world had once been ruled by light before humans claimed power through boundaries and names. In her silence, she felt the connection between every human, animal, and stone in the valley, all part of the same consciousness network, now visible through the glowing symbols. She closed her eyes briefly, sensing the world pulsating within her, knowing that this experience was a gift, a chance to touch something never recorded in history, yet alive in every breath, movement, and moment observed by those present. Human interaction with the ancient map began to awaken awareness of lost civilizations and their connection to a long-forgotten nature. Every luminous line flowing through the air seemed to touch the deepest parts of the human mind, reminding them that the earth was once inhabited by beings who understood the language of stone, water, and wind. In the village, people began to move slowly, touching the soil, caressing stone surfaces, or gazing at flowing water in a new way, as if learning to read a text not written on paper, but on the surface of the world itself. The ancient map revealed shapes of sunken cities, trade routes, long lost, and ruins, now only visible in the shadows of floating light. A young man stood at the edge of a river, now visible on the symbol map, eyes fixed on the luminous stream, piercing through the earth. He felt the presence of people from unrecorded times, humans living before history learned to name everything. The river flowed through his memory, carrying the scent of wet soil, the sound of rustling trees, and songs of creatures now existing only in folklore. Each time he moved his hand to follow a line of light, he felt connected to those ancient beings, not as an observer, but as part of the same consciousness network. He understood that this map was not merely visual knowledge, but an experience uniting past, present, and perhaps future. On a distant hill, an old woman watched the symbol patterns appearing in the air, and each point of light seemed to speak directly to her. She recognized plants once cultivated by ancient humans, forest paths, and stone houses built by hands, now leaving only traces in the Earth's collective memory. She realized that their knowledge was not only about survival, but about understanding the rhythm of the world. How water flows, how wind carries seeds, how light and shadow create meaning. In the silence, she felt herself become a gentle translator, bridging the lost world with the living present without words, only through perception and vision that transcended ordinary human limits. Children played in the valley, following the flowing light-forming rivers and ancient mountains. They kicked the earth, touched stones, and felt different sensations with each step, as if touching unrecorded history. Trees trembled gently as they ran, seemingly welcoming the footsteps carrying the memory of the ancient world back to the surface. Animals responded to, deer and birds moving in rhythm with the dancing light, creating a subtle yet profound harmony between humans, animals, and the earth itself. The world appeared as a stage where ancient consciousness and modern humans met in a gentle choreography, reframing reality and evoking quiet, poetic. In the village center, an old man bent over the ground, allowing the light of the ancient map to flow through his hands. He felt layers of history pulsating within the earth, from times before cities were built to before humans understood the concept of linear time. He realized that this map could not be memorized or recorded in books. It had to be experienced, felt, and carried in the body as memory. Each point of light touching his skin evoked images, scents, and sounds from lost civilizations, as if messages were sent directly from the earth to the humans present. Others realized the same. They stood in gentle silence, feeling the ancient map ignite the dormant collective memory within, reminding them that this world is older, more alive, and more mysterious than they had ever imagined. As the ancient map spread its light, the lines that were once faint now formed a clearer network, connecting rivers, mountains, and valleys once inhabited by humans before the birth of recorded history. Each glowing line appeared like the veins of the world, carrying energy only understood by ancient beings who could read the rhythm of nature. People in the village began to walk along these lines, following the slowly moving light in the air and on the ground, feeling subtle vibrations beneath their feet as if the earth itself whispered, showing paths once bustling with life. Children crawled along the soil, touching the luminous lines, and saw visions of ancient life, hunters holding spears, weavers sitting by rivers, even animals now existing only in legends. In the forest, the light penetrated the canopy, revealing ancient forms hidden among branches and leaves. Birds that normally flew low now followed the streams of light, leaving tiny trails like brushstrokes in the air. A deer paused for a moment, eyes meeting a line of light that seemed to guide its steps, then moved again, following a rhythm invisible to humans. Soil and stones glowed gently where the light touched, transforming the landscape into a living stage where past and present met. And each breath felt intertwined with the heartbeat of an earth older than recorded history. An old man sat at the edge of the lake, now reflecting the map's light, gazing at a surface that no longer only mirrored shadows, but also the lines and shapes of lost civilizations. He felt that each time the light touched the water, ancient memories awakened, bringing footsteps unheard, unspoken conversations, and scents long vanished. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the luminous lines penetrate his mind, and suddenly understood. This world is more than it appears. It is a network of life where humans are merely one node among many that have pulsed across the earth. In the valley, children began arranging stones and twigs, following patterns emerging from the light, recreating replicas of ancient cities lost to time. The ground vibrated gently beneath their feet, indicating that the earth welcomed their actions, as if this simple participation were a ritual awakening ancient consciousness. Birds sang longer, more melodic notes, conveying messages only understood by those present in the light. Every movement of humans, animals, and water seemed connected by the network of light, affirming that the ancient world and the present are not separate but a single unity, waiting for humans to recognize it. The old woman stood atop a hill, eyes gazing far across the network of light, stretching from valley to valley, connecting mountains, rivers, and seas. She felt the voice of the ancient world whisper in her ears, a voice unutterable in words, felt instead through vibrations in the earth and the light piercing the air. She bent down, touching the soil with both hands, and felt the lines of light penetrate her body, unlocking hidden memories, revealing how humans and nature once lived together in a harmonious symphony. Everyone touching the lines felt similarly, as if the ancient map not only indicated locations, but also taught a lost language, the language of life, growth, and the earth's collective consciousness. By the riverside, a little girl watched a line of light flowing over the water's surface, and asked her mother if it was the same river their ancestors had crossed thousands of years ago. Her mother only smiled, offering no direct answer. For they both knew that what they saw was not merely a river, but the trace of life traveling millennia, carrying untold stories and experiences beyond ordinary human memory. The light pulsed gently, signaling that the ancient map was at work, lifting the veil of the past slowly. And everyone gazing upon it felt the depth of time as if history itself had come alive before their eyes. The lines of light forming the ancient map now seemed to move more freely, tracing hills, valleys, and rivers, as if they had a will of their own. People touching the lines felt a strange sensation, not merely seeing geographic paths, but seemingly traveling through the world's memories older than themselves. Each step along the lines revealed shadows of life that had existed, but not merely reflections of the past. They were living forms of consciousness, holding forgotten wisdom, unheard voices, scents of ancient forests, and the taste of water pure before pollution and human change. They began to understand that this map was not only depicting places, but also igniting connections between humans, animals, plants, and stones, all elements that had once pulsed on the earth. In the valley, children played while following the light-seeing creatures now existing only in the earth's collective memory. Sometimes like ancient birds with translucent wings, sometimes like fish floating through the air, and sometimes like humans moving between shadow and light. They were not afraid, only curious, for this world seemed to welcome them, showing that ancient life still existed in unseen ways, in streams of light and air that pulsed. Adults stood by the river watching the lines form patterns similar to those seen on ancient stones, and now they understood that these patterns were not mere ornaments, but a language conveying something far greater than humans could fully comprehend. An old woman sat beneath a large tree, closing her eyes, letting the ancient map's light penetrate her skin and bones. She felt that her body had become part of a larger network, not just as a human, but as a node in the limitless consciousness of the earth. The sounds of wind, rustling water, and other humans' footsteps merged into music synchronized with the vibration of the ground, forming a slow, gentle symphony. Everyone present felt this pulse within themselves, indescribable in words, only felt as unity with a world older than history. On the mountain, the light formed new flows, seeping into rock crevices and revealing shadows of lost civilizations. Stone cities submerged underwater, streets once bustling with humans, and forests now legendary. These shadows moved slowly, interacting with nature touched by the light, as if the earth were replaying stories that once happened, only comprehensible to those who watched patiently. Rivers spiraled and glowed, connecting all these places, and people began to feel themselves part of the current, witnessing ancient life returning in light and subtle movement. In the village, people sat on the ground, silently gazing at each other, realizing that the lines of light were not merely a map, but a device connecting consciousness. They felt shared memories. The same fear when floods arrived thousands of years ago, the joy of hunting, tranquility in the forest, and the scent of wet earth marking ancient rainy seasons. Children laughed, elders smiled, and the map's light penetrated each individual, guiding them through a collective experience, long buried by time, making humans realize that past and present were not separate lines, but a single stream of consciousness flowing continuously. The sky gradually changed color, but this time it was not merely a new combination of hues, but a field fused with the map's light. Tiny particles spun in the air, following the line's flow, clinging to human skin, providing a warm, strange sensation, as if everyone now carried the ancient map within themselves. Birds and other animals seemed to understand, following the lines, becoming part of the unseen living network. And everyone present felt that they were in the midst of a phenomenon larger than the physical world. A consciousness connecting all that had existed and all that would exist, woven in a network unbounded by time. At the end of the day, as the light dimmed and the map's lines slowly dissolved into air and soil, people sat in silence. They spoke little, for words could not capture the experience. Yet each breath seemed to merge with the earth's pulse, and the consciousness carried by the ancient map became part of themselves. They understood that this world was not only a place, but also an experience, a network of life and memory. And everyone who touched the light had become part of a story far greater than themselves. The lines of light that had previously flowed freely now began to merge, forming intricate symbolic patterns like an ancient language never known. The symbols did not remain static. They moved slowly, rotated, and transformed, connecting hills, valleys, rivers, and villages into a single living network. People who touched the light felt that time was no longer linear. Past, present, and future seemed to overlap like thin layers of water forming whirlpools. Every breath, every step, every heartbeat seemed part of this current, and their consciousness began to expand, encompassing the experience of the entire Earth. They realized that the symbols were not merely markers of place, but windows into various moments that had occurred and would occur, allowing humans to feel the world as the Earth itself experienced it. In the valley, children followed the spiraling lines, touching symbols that changed color with each step. These colors were not merely beautiful. They emitted different sensations, sometimes warm, sometimes cool, sometimes like sounds that could only be felt, not heard. Children laughed and ran, but their laughter now echoed through time, repeating across eras, connecting them with lives that had vanished and lives yet to be born. Adults stood observing the symbols, feeling their bodies pulse in rhythm with the light, and began to understand that this experience was not just visual, but comprehensive, engaging senses, thoughts, and emotions as if they had become part of the consciousness of a planet much older than themselves. An old woman closed her eyes, letting the symbols seep into her mind. She felt memories that were not her own, memories of humans and animals, forests and rivers, mountains and seas that existed long before recorded civilization. All these appeared simultaneously, like a giant book opened 2 pages never written in words. In the silence, she realized the symbols were the language of the Earth itself, a way the planet stored its memory, and that every living being, even humans, was just part of a long record continuously written in light movement and vibrations, only felt, not spoken. On the mountain, the light formed flows descending, touching every rock and tree, leaving traces of patterns that seemed to want to speak. The patterns were not merely geometric. They carried deep meanings, experiences impossible to fully translate into words. People following these patterns felt energy flowing differently in every part of their bodies, beginning to understand that the world stored memories in every element from soil to water, from air to fire, that these light symbols were the key to unlocking them. In the village, inhabitants sat by the river, watching the spiraling lines in the air, realizing that the ancient map had now transformed into a collective experience where individuals and nature could no longer be separated. The symbols connected them not only to place, but also to time, bringing an understanding that history, life, and human experience were merely layers intertwined within the vast network of consciousness. They felt a nearly sacred silence and beauty, and everyone present became part of this phenomenon, recognizing that the experience of time, space, and life had now merged into an endless current. As night fell, the symbols continued to move, reflecting gentle light onto the sky and ground. Children fell asleep in the laps of their parents, yet they still felt the light's vibrations within themselves, like dreams unwilling to fade. Adults sensed the heartbeat of the Earth in sync with their own, and the collective consciousness awakened by the luminous symbols made everyone feel they had touched something eternal, something larger than themselves, something that would continue to exist even as they slept and the world returned to normal. By the end of the night, the lines of light and symbols gradually dissolved, leaving a residual warmth and calmness that filled the valley. Everyone felt they had become part of something far greater than ordinary daily experience. They did not fully comprehend what had just occurred, but they knew it had transformed their perception of the world and of time. The first light, the ancient map, and the mysterious symbols had merged with them, leaving an indelible impression, and the world stood in gentle silence, awaiting the next breath of the earth itself. As the light and symbols gradually faded into the air, humans began to sense a subtle yet profound shift in their perception of themselves and the world around them. Their bodies felt lighter, as if not entirely confined by flesh and bone, while their minds flowed beyond the usual rigid boundaries between individual and environment. Each person felt an unseen connection with trees, rivers, stones, and animals, as though every element of nature now contained the same consciousness as themselves. Even the sound of wind and the trickling of water became part of their inner conversation, filling their minds with rhythmic patterns that calmed them, revealing that they were not the center of the world, but one pulse among many, flowing with the earth. In the valley, people walked slowly, feeling the ground beneath their feet pulse with a subtle yet tangible rhythm, like a great heartbeat connecting all life. Each step left faint traces of light on the soil, which soon dissolved, like memories appearing briefly and vanishing, leaving sensations beyond words. Children who had run now walked with heightened awareness, observing stones, grass, and leaves with an intensity that made the objects seem alive and new. They began to perceive that every element of nature was not merely inert, but part of a vast, interconnected consciousness. And every interaction with the world left lasting imprints of experience, even if temporarily visible. Some people closed their eyes, allowing themselves to drift in the experience, gradually realizing that the boundary between themselves and nature was beginning to blur. They could feel currents of energy moving through their bodies, penetrating the skin, merging with air and soil. This energy felt like an extension of their own breath, yet broader and more enduring than their individual life. The subtle sounds of nature rippling water, the rustle of leaves, whispering wind became a language understood without words, a language connecting them to the earth and all life that had ever existed within it. In this awareness, humans sensed that their experience was not merely subjective, but part of a global consciousness older than recorded history. At the river's edge, an old man gazed into the calm water and slowly realized that he was not a passive observer. He was part of the current, part of the pattern forming this world. In the reflection, he did not only see his own face, but the faces of all creatures that had ever lived in the valley, humans and animals, trees and stones. All were present together, merging into a collective consciousness flowing across time and space. The feeling was not frightening. Instead, it was reassuring, granting a sense that individual identity was merely one layer of a greater experience. As night deepened, the remaining symbol lights pulsed softly in the air, and humans began to perceive their connection with time in a new way. They felt the past as alive, not just memory. The future as something that might already exist elsewhere, and the present as a moment constantly shaping itself. Each breath brought a new awareness, and each heartbeat seemed in sync with the earth's pulse. There was no desire to control the world. It's only the understanding that they were part of an endless current far greater than anything they could imagine. In the night sky, stars appeared closer, yet not as distant objects. They became points in the same network of consciousness, pulsing in unison with humans and the earth. Some gazed upward, sensing an uncanny feeling, as if they could perceive the breath and heartbeat of another world existing beyond their own time and space. Everyone began to realize that the boundary between reality and imagination, between personal experience and collective consciousness, was beginning to blur. The world was no longer a collection of separate objects and beings. It was a single sentient organism that humans now felt through their bodies, minds, and hearts. By the end of the night, humans sat together in the valley, silent and still, letting this experience fully permeate them. No words were spoken, yet everyone felt the same presence, a vast consciousness flowing through them. The last traces of the symbol light faded, leaving a warm, gentle residue in the air. Yet its influence lived on in human perception. They had sensed the world as a whole, and this awareness could not be erased. In that silence, they realized that the boundary between self and world was merely a long-standing illusion. And that night, they learned to see the world through the eyes of the earth itself. As the dawn gradually swept across the valley with warm yet gentle light, humans began to realize that the experience of the previous night would never fully disappear. The symbol lights, though now dissolved into the air, left traces in their consciousness, a resonance guiding each step and breath. The ground beneath their feet felt alive, not merely as a physical foundation, but as a network connecting every living being, every stone, and every flowing stream in the valley. They walked among trees and rocks with a calm never felt before, aware that every touch, every sound, even every shadow was part of a larger conversation. A conversation that had persisted since the beginning of time and would continue long after they were gone. People began to understand that the world was not merely a place to live, but a teacher and witness, carrying stories from a past far older than written history. They observed falling leaves, flowing water, the earth vibrating gently beneath their feet, sensing that every element carried its own memory. A young woman bent down, touching the wet grass, feeling subtle patterns ripple beneath her fingers, like waves of time carrying millions of years of memory. Each step brought them closer to understanding that they were not masters of the world, but a part of it, part of a stream of consciousness broader and older than anything they could imagine. By the riverbank, the light of the symbols that had faded now seemed to return in the water's reflection, soft and pulsing slowly. People gazed at it, not with desire to grasp or control, but with the awareness that it was a reminder, an eternal reminder of the interconnectedness of all things. They realized that every interaction, every breath, every thought was part of a greater symphony, in which humans were merely one note in a melody longer than time itself. A small child looked into the water, smiling, feeling the same energy that had flowed through the earth, through the sky, and through every being that had ever lived. It was not just an experience. It was a lesson on how to live and exist, how to merge without losing identity, how to understand that each individual is a reflection of the entire universe. As a gentle wind moved through the valley, carrying the scent of wet earth, wildflowers, and minerals from ancient stones, humans felt the hidden rhythm of the world. They heard sounds previously unheard, not through ears, but through their bodies and minds, a sound telling the history of the valley, the mountains and the waters flowing through it. Everyone bowed briefly, letting that rhythm merge with their own heartbeat. Realizing that the Symbolite experience was not a fleeting phenomenon, but an eternal reminder that humans and the world are always connected, inseparable. As the sun rose higher, people moved slowly, speaking softly to each other, full of respect, unhurried. Knowing that time was no longer measured by clocks or the sun alone, but by the natural rhythm of the world flowing through them. They understood that every movement, every word, every breath was part of an experience greater than themselves. The world that had once seemed separate was now a unified whole, where humans, trees, stones, water, and light all played inseparable roles. This awareness brought deep calm, a realization that life is not just about survival, but about listening, sensing, and being part of an unending current. In the afternoon, as long shadows stretched across the valley, humans sat together by the river, observing the soft reflection of light on the water's surface. They felt the resonance of the symbol light that had vanished. Understanding that the experience was now embedded in their consciousness, subtly yet permanently guiding them. Each person carried that experience within, knowing that their relationship with nature and time was no longer mere observation, but active awareness, a new way to be present in the world. Words could not capture the feeling, only silence, tranquility, and deep awe toward the mystery and beauty surrounding them. And as night gradually fell again, the valley illuminated by gentle moonlight, humans felt that the symbol light had taught them something unforgettable, that they were part of something greater, a current of consciousness existing long before they were born and enduring long after they were gone. The world was not just a place to live, but a space to remember, to feel, and to connect. With this understanding, they closed their day with calm, knowing that the experience of the symbolite was a gift that continued to pulse within them, reminding them that humans and nature are one, and that consciousness is a light that never fades. That night fell with a silence denser than usual, as if the world held its breath, awaiting something that could not be explained in words. In the valley, humans sat in stillness, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath them, a subtle rhythm distinct from their own heartbeat. Trees swayed slowly, yet there was no wind. Their leaves emitted a faint glow, pulsing in rhythm, seemingly originating from the earth's core. The river flowing through the valley reflected unusual shadows, not the shadows of humans, but of the past, of lost cities, and of creatures that may have existed before history was recorded. Everything appeared as a moving painting, where every color and movement contained memories older than humanity. People realized that this night was different from the previous one. The light they saw was no longer merely the remnants of symbols, but something deeper, something that shaped themselves and the world simultaneously. They bent down, touched the ground, and felt waves of energy enveloping every particle of air. There was no sound except the subtle pulse traveling through soil, through stones, entering their bodies, as if the earth itself whispered in a language never known. Some closed their eyes, allowing themselves to drift, while others stared at the shadows on the water's surface, realizing the shadows moved according to their own memories, not the physical world. An old man walked slowly to the riverbank, his hand touching water that now felt like a mirror of time. He saw not only his reflection, but reflections of lost generations. Cities buried beneath earth and water, and beings living between humans and shadows. The faint light emerging from the river seemed to merge with his skin, penetrating and leaving traces in his mind and memory. He smiled faintly, realizing that this experience was an understanding of a greater existence, of how the world remembers itself through those present. In the night sky, stars appeared in unusual patterns, like an inverted, ancient map charting paths forgotten by humans. Some looked up, attempting to recall the star names they had learned, but tonight recognized neither names nor boundaries. Every point of light seemed alive, interacting with the earth and beings below, creating a delicate symphony of light and motion impossible to record in ordinary thought. Even animals in the valley responded in their own ways. Deer gazed upward. Nocturnal birds flew in rhythm with the energy waves in the air, and the wind carried scents that seemed to recall places never visited. Some humans began to sense that the history they knew was only the thinnest layer of a world far older and more complex. The light patterns in the river and shadows on the ground indicated a reality existing before humans understood time and space. They understood, vaguely, yet profoundly, that a stream of consciousness connected all things humans, stones, water, trees, and even the light itself. This consciousness appeared alive, flowing and pulsing, evoking a deep awe, a sense that they were witnesses to something limitless and eternal. They began to realize that this night was not merely a natural phenomenon, but a reminder that humans were only part of a far larger story. Every breath, every step in the valley was part of the memory of the world. No one dared speak, for words would feel too shallow to describe the depth of this experience. Only silence and observation remained, allowing them to become part of the current of history flowing among light, shadow, and earth. As time moved slowly, humans began to sense their connection to every object around them. Stones that once seemed hard and cold now felt imbued with energy, holding stories. Towering trees appeared as guardians of the past, each branch and leaf reflecting memories invisible to the naked eye. The flowing river now felt like a carrier of memory, linking living generations with those long gone. They looked at the world with new eyes, a softer yet deeper awareness, knowing they were never truly alone. The night ended without announcement, without a clear dawn. Yet every human in the valley knew they had touched something greater than themselves, something they would never forget. They returned home with calm steps, carrying the night's experience within them, aware that the visible world was only one layer of a far wider reality. Light, shadow, earth, and water continued to pulse around them, a reminder that mystery lives and that humans are part of that very mystery. Beneath the valley, the earth began to pulse in a subtle way, like a long hidden breath rising from beneath layers of stone and tree roots. The vibrations could not be heard, but were felt in every step that touched the ground, in every palm pressed against the rocks, and in every soul gazing into the silent night. the seemingly ordinary layers of soil became a repository of memory, like a library never opened, where every grain of sand and every mineral crystal held stories from thousands of generations past. People felt a pulse flowing from the Earth's core to the surface, carrying information not in words, but as pure experience entering their consciousness. They began to realize that the valley's earth, stones, and water were not mere inanimate matter, but living witnesses to forgotten history. The small river winding through the valley reflected shifting light, sometimes like fire, sometimes like clear water, but always displaying forms that seemed alive on their own. Each ripple of water appeared like a moving timeline, revealing fragments of the past, ruined stone cities, trees taller than ever known, and unknown creatures. People watched these patterns in calm, letting themselves drift among the flow of history that arrived not through words, but through gentle yet intense perception and vision. A young woman sat at the riverbank, gazing at the shadows moving across the water's surface. She sensed that these shadows were not mere reflections, but mirrors of overlapping layers of time. Within them, she saw the village that once stood, humans who had walked there, and events never recorded in any history. She felt something greater than herself, as if suspended between living moments of the past, where every instant still existed, waiting to be remembered. Words could not be spoken, only silence expanding, as if the world permitted them to see what lay hidden beneath the surface of everyday life. The large stones along the valley began to emit a faint light, not bright, but enough to reveal carvings almost lost to time. These carvings were not human or animal forms, but symbols resembling flowing water and leaf patterns, as if writing the language of nature itself. People realized that these symbols were not made by humans, but by the world itself, a reminder for future generations on how to live in harmony with the earth. Every observer felt a profound connection, as if the stones spoke in a silent language understood only by the heart, not the mind. The valley air now carried fine particles spinning, glowing faintly under the moonlight that peeked through clouds. These particles clung to skin and hair, entering the senses, leaving an indescribable sensation, a sense of broader awareness. An understanding that every living being, every tree, every grain of sand was part of the same historical flow. They realized humans were not passive observers, but active participants in a cosmic drama that unfolded long before words and writing existed. They understood that life and history were not separate, but united in a gentle pulse flowing through the entire world. From afar, a soft sound emerged, like echoes from vibrating stones or the whisper of a river flowing beneath the surface. It could not be described in words, yet it made everyone who heard it feel deeply connected to the earth. There was no fear or anxiety, only a vast tranquility, as if listening to a long-forgotten secret accessible only when heart and body were fully open. They realized this secret was not owned by any one person, but belonged to all present, and even for those yet to be born, these layers of history would remain, waiting to be discovered again. The night felt endless, yet not frightening. Light, shadow, air, earth, and water moved in subtle harmony, guiding humans to understand that every part of this world had its own consciousness. They learned to see without words, to hear without sound, and to feel without boundaries. The world taught them that existence was not merely living on the surface, but also understanding the pulse within the earth itself. In the valley's silence, humans became witnesses to ancient consciousness alive beneath them. A consciousness connecting past, present, and future in one endless, subtle flow. Above the valley, the light emanating from the cracks in the earth began to shift, following the pulses rising from the underground layers. No one controlled it. No human hand touched it. Yet every glowing particle moved as if dancing to an unheard rhythm, a symphony to be felt rather than heard. The patterns forming in the air appeared random at first, but for those who watched patiently, soft lines began connecting stones, trees, and water, creating a network of light integrated with the valley's topography. Each node of the network acted like a heartbeat, emitting subtle energy felt in the chest, spreading warmth to the fingertips. People began moving slowly, treading the paths illuminated by the light. Not to reach a destination, but to understand the newly discovered rhythm. The ground beneath their feet felt alive, pulsing gently, as if informing them that they were part of a system far larger than themselves. Each step slightly altered the light pattern, causing the network to grow, expand, and adapt to human movement, as if the earth and its inhabitants were conversing in a delicate, inarticulate language. Children running among the beams laughed softly, not from ordinary joy, but from pure awe, aware of their connection to a greater world. At the riverbank, previously calm waters began reflecting the light patterns, turning the surface into a living canvas. Slow-moving ripples mimicked the light network, creating the illusion that the river flowed in secret rhythm aligned with the earth. Stones that had once seemed rigid now appeared softer, as if made of flowing energy layers, and plants along the bank glowed, reflecting ever-changing light colors. The old woman standing near the river closed her eyes briefly, feeling this flow through her skin, through her bones, and she smiled, recognizing that the world now spoke in forms that could not be explained but could be felt by those fully present. Soft sounds began to emerge, no longer from air or water, but from the earth itself. The faint vibrations once only felt became audible as low tones, like whispers of thousands of voices merged, creating a melody enveloping the entire valley. People stood in silence, realizing they were part of this symphony, not passive listeners, but active participants shaping the sounds born from the earth. Each person felt the pulse within themselves, and they understood something long hidden, that the earth is not just a home, but a living being with memory, consciousness, and the ability to speak through light and sound. The night deepened, yet the valley did not darken. The light patterns became increasingly complex, forming circles and spirals never before seen on the surface. Those who watched long enough began to see a faint figure appear within the light, like an ancient shadow waiting to be remembered. The figure was neither human nor animal, but a shifting form, sometimes resembling a bird, sometimes a flowing stream, sometimes a tree growing from the light itself. It moved slowly, following the light and the earth's rhythm, as if embodying the consciousness long hidden in the earth's deepest layers. A young boy knelt on the ground, placing his palms on the glowing stones, feeling waves of energy flow into his body. His body vibrated lightly, and in that moment, he understood that he was part of something far greater than the village, the river, or even the earth itself. He felt an unbroken connection between himself, the luminous being, and the pulse in the ground. Everything seemed like a single deep breath flowing through space, time, and consciousness. There was no fear, only profound stillness, a trust in something unexplainable, yet palpable. Above, stars began to appear one by one, but their light did not compete with the Earth's glow. Instead, they seemed to merge with the luminous network, adding depth to the patterns forming. Sky and earth now felt like one, where boundaries between above and below, reality and imagination, past and present, slowly dissolved. Those present experienced this as living silence, as gentle reality, and as knowledge that they had touched something eternal, something that would continue to pulse even as the world outside this valley resumed its ordinary rhythm. The light and shadows now began to form a clearer pattern, an ancient symbol seemingly stored in the deepest layers of the earth since a time beyond human memory. The pattern was neither letter nor number, nor a recognizable image to the ordinary eye. It lived, pulsing and slowly changing as it was observed. The symbol appeared as delicate interwoven lines connecting every stone, tree, and stream in the valley, as if the earth wished to teach a language long forgotten. Those present felt a strange sensation in their chests, a pulse aligned with the rhythm of the symbol, as if their bodies were part of the same network. They did not speak or move hastily, only watching and allowing themselves to be translated by the dancing light and shadows. A young woman bowed to the ground, placing her hands on a glowing stone, feeling a gentle vibration penetrate to her heart. Within that vibration, she sensed untold histories, tales of a vanished world, of civilizations lost before humans recorded time. The symbol pulsed softly, like the heartbeat of the earth itself, instilling the sense that all that exists now is but a small fragment of something far greater and immeasurable. The children around her watched with wide eyes, and though they could not fully understand the symbol's meaning, they felt the same wonder, pure and wordless. In the air, particles of light formed spirals and circles following the lines of the symbol, dancing to emphasize the hidden meaning. Some reached out to touch the air gently, feeling the energy flowing, warm and soft, merging with their skin. The wind carried the scents of wet soil, burnt metal, and wildflowers, blending the senses and making them feel as if they existed in a different space and time. The symbol, the light, and the entire valley now seemed alive, pulsing and possessing a language of its own, felt without words, only through body and awareness. As the night deepened, shadows of the ancient being that emerged in the light became clearer. Its form remained fluid, shifting from one shape to another, sometimes a bird, sometimes flowing water, sometimes a glowing tree trunk. Yet every movement of the being interacted with the symbols in the air, as if both were one entity. The people realized that the light, shadows, and symbols were not separate phenomena, but parts of the same language, a language connecting them to a world older and broader than human memory. An old man sat at the riverbank, eyes fixed on the symbols and the dancing light. He felt something indescribable, a sensation that he had rediscovered something lost long ago, something older than all recorded history. The symbols seemed to speak to him, not with a voice, but through vibrations coursing through his body. He felt a profound connection between himself, the valley, the ancient being, and the dancing light, as if the entire world around them was revealing secrets long concealed. In the distance, the mountain that had once emitted light now moderated its pulse, giving space for the symbols and the ancient being to take over the night story. The river, reflecting the light, wound gently, flowing in rhythm with the symbol's pulse, and all creatures in the valley responded subtly. A sense of calm permeated the air, a calm that soothed not just the body, but also consciousness, making everyone feel connected to something greater than themselves. Above all, the sky began to display colors unlike any before. Neither blue nor black, but a blend of soft light and shadows, creating a celestial canvas never seen. The ancient symbol now appeared as a bridge between earth and sky, between light and shadow, between the present and the lost ages. Everyone who gazed upon it felt the same sensation. This world was vaster, older, and more alive than they had ever imagined. And they were part of an unspoken story. As the night grew deeper, the ancient symbols began to interact with human memory, not through words or sound, but through sensations that seeped into the body, igniting forgotten memories and moments that had never occurred in recorded history. Everyone felt flashes of lost pasts, faces they had never met, cities they had never visited, rivers flowing into seas that never existed on any map. The memories were unclear and nonlinear, more like waves of consciousness sweeping and embracing, connecting every soul present in the valley. They felt no confusion or fear, for the sensation arrived with an extraordinary gentleness, like a warm wind brushing the skin, bringing profound calm. A young man stood in the middle of the meadow, closing his eyes and letting the symbols and light penetrate him. He felt something strange, yet soothing within, as though he were witnessing a world never known, yet deeply familiar. The feeling could not be captured in ordinary words. Not longing, not nostalgia, but more like the awareness that he was part of a vast stream of life older than human history. He sensed that everything lost, everything submerged by time and water, returned within him, even if only for a fleeting moment. Around him, children watched the pulsating air, following the lines of the slowly moving symbols. They laughed at sounds unheard, for the laughter arose from memories and emotions they had never experienced. Birds perched in the trees began to mimic unusual tones, not chirps, but echoes that followed the rhythm of the symbols. Even the wind carried subtle sounds, almost like whispers from another world, swirling among the trees and the valley, uniting all present in the same awareness. The elders who had witnessed many seasons stood at the riverbank, their hands touching the glimmering water. They felt the ripples of the symbols permeate their being, opening ancient pages of memory cloaked in dust and time. In the gentle silence, they caught glimpses of lost civilizations. Stone houses submerged by floods, streets now only shadows, and untold stories. All of this appeared, not as narrated history, but as experiences to be felt, touched, and accepted without words. The ancient symbols and light now appeared as a bridge between the present and the lost ages, connecting all beings present with a world never known. Every breath carried new experience. Every movement of the eyes followed the pulsing flow of the symbols. And every heartbeat synchronized with the same rhythm. No one moved hastily. No one spoke loudly. All were absorbed in the gentle rhythm that taught them that the world was broader, older, and more alive than they had ever understood. As the night deepened, the symbol's light slowly seeped into the earth, penetrating roots, stones, rivers, and human bodies. Everyone felt a subtle yet tangible connection, the sense that they were not mere observers, but part of the Earth's collective memory, waiting thousands of years to awaken. In that silence, they realized that every step, every breath, every gaze they took was now part of a story far greater, a tale of a lost world that remained alive within themselves. The ancient symbols now appeared like a living map, not to be interpreted with the eyes, but with the entire body and mind. Every line, circle, and glowing shape pulsed in rhythm with a different sense of time. A time that was nonlinear, circular, intersecting past, present, and potential future. The humans standing in the valley felt as if they were reading the world in a way they had never understood before. Not through books or maps, but through experiences that permeated their being. Everything they touched, saw, and even breathed became part of the language of symbols. A language that required awareness to comprehend, not mere sight. The air in the valley now felt dense, filled with inexplicable energy. The light from the symbols danced on the surfaces of rivers and lakes, creating reflections that not only mirrored physical forms, but also the feelings and memories stored deep within human bodies. People felt the same pulse as the rhythm of that light, as if their hearts had become part of an unseen ancient entity present around them. Every step on the damp, moss-covered earth seemed to rewrite lost history, connecting the world that had once sunk with the world they now stood upon. An elderly woman felt flashes of a stone city submerged by water thousands of years ago, collapsed houses and vanished streets rising again within her consciousness. She could not explain it in words, for it was neither imagination nor personal memory, but a collective experience emanating from the symbols and light enveloping the valley. The children nearby felt similarly, yet with innocent curiosity, as if witnessing a world never touched by humans, a world offering limitless possibilities. The symbols did not merely connect them to the past, but also opened a path toward a new understanding of existence. They sensed that the lost world was not just a story, but a map of a reality hidden beneath everyday life. Every human became both witness and participant in this process, realizing that memory is not merely the past, but also the foundation for possibilities to come. The ancient light guided them, not with direction, but with rhythm. Not with command, but with whispers penetrating consciousness, leading them deeper into the core of their own being. As night continued to expand, the symbols gradually transformed from lines and circles into patterns resembling living organisms. They moved, evolved, as if growing a new world in the air and on the ground, forming a map that could not be read with the eyes, only felt with the soul. People realized they were witnessing the rebirth of a lost world, not as a physical realm, but as a collective consciousness integrating past, present, and future into a unified experience. That world lived through them, and they through it in an unseen yet tangible cycle, guiding humanity to understand that loss is not the end, but the beginning of a broader comprehension of existence. The night grew darker, yet the valley was not shadowed. The light from the ancient symbols faded slowly, leaving soft traces in the air that felt like the breath of the world itself. The wind moved gently, not pushing leaves or grass, but as if lifting the consciousness of the humans standing on the wet earth. Each person felt the same rhythm, a slow pulse penetrating their bodies, calming the mind, bringing a strange yet wondrous sense of safety. The usual sounds of night from insects, water, or distant animals seemed to vanish, replaced by subtle whispers that could not be articulated, only felt. In the air, the last particles of light from the symbols clung to human skin, seeping into the pores, then dissolving without trace. They felt a gentle understanding, not through thought, but through sensation, as if the lost world was speaking to them through body and soul, not through voice or sight. All memories that once seemed separate now merged. Night, valley. An ancient light became a single peaceful consciousness, erasing the boundary between the real and the remembered. The elderly woman who had quietly guided them from the beginning now sat on a valley rock, slowly closing her eyes. Her breath synchronized with the lingering pulse of light, and with every exhale, the earth around her seemed to tremble softly, responding to the same rhythm. The children who had been curious at first now sat in a circle near her, feeling a profound calm, an unexplainable sensation that made them feel part of something far greater than themselves. Meanwhile, the fading ancient light formed its final pattern in the air, circles and lines closing like a book that had been read, not with words, but through experiences absorbed into the soul. People stood or sat quietly, realizing they had just witnessed something that could not be repeated. Something that altered the way they perceived the world and themselves. There was no fear, no exaggerated excitement, only deep peace and the awareness that this world, once mysterious and lost, had now etched a new understanding into their being. As night enveloped the entire valley, the sounds of nature gently returned, flowing water, trembling leaves, animals moving in the distance, but now everything was in harmony with the rhythm they had felt since the symbols appeared. The world felt unified, humans united with the earth, with light, with memories, and remaining possibilities. They did not need words to explain what had occurred, for everything had been absorbed into their bodies and minds. The valley was now silent, yet a silence full of meaning, like a fairy tale gently closed, leaving a beautiful melancholic feeling and a lingering mystery, inviting each person to sleep with the same curiosity and peace. The world gradually calmed, the valley, lake, and forests surrounding the village now resting in gentle silence. The ancient light that had danced throughout the night finally merged with the air and soil, leaving only subtle traces that felt more like memories than tangible things. The night wind carried the scent of burnt metal and wildflowers, yet it did not sting or bite. It merely brushed their skin and hair softly, as if the universe closed its eyes together with humans who began to bow their heads for sleep. All that had occurred during the long day now condensed into a singular, quiet peace, as though the world itself held its breath, waiting without urgency. People sat or lay upon the damp earth, feeling the pulse of light that had become part of their bodies, becoming a breath invisible yet real. They did not speak, only looked around, observing shadows and light now mingled with darkness. Each second felt elongated, stretching, bringing a sweet melancholic awareness that the world was no longer divided between past and present, between life and death, between the real and the remembered. All boundaries dissolved, leaving a single, peaceful consciousness, flowing slowly like an unhurried river, carrying them toward bed into dreams full of beauty and mystery. In the distance, the mountain that had opened itself now appeared only as a soft shadow beneath the gradually darkening sky. The lake shimmered faintly, reflecting a night sky that was not entirely real, as if calling humans to believe in something greater than themselves, something beyond words. The last particles of light mingled with the air, settling upon hair and skin, slowly dissolving into their bodies, bringing warmth and calm impossible to articulate. They knew, without fully knowing, that the light would remain within them, as memory, as the pulse of the world that continued to beat. As night fully enveloped the valley, the sounds of nature returned softly. Flowing water, trembling leaves, nocturnal birds, and small animals moving in the distance, all now harmonized with the heartbeat of the humans witnessing it. The world stood between sleep and wakefulness, between dream and reality, leaving a sweet, melancholic sense, as if holding the final secret that would never truly be revealed. In that profound silence, everyone closed their eyes, feeling part of something greater, part of the endless flow called life, leaving them in gentle sleep with mystery lingering, waiting to be discovered again by a heart still curious. The world remained still, but a living stillness, one that holds stories of thousands of years, unspoken mysteries, and the first light once worshipped, now pulsing within every sleeping human breath. The valley, mountain, and lake became one with them, a reminder that every ending is merely another beginning, that every moment of life carries secrets gentle and beautiful, waiting to be felt rather than explained. Slowly, humans fell asleep, carried into a dreamscape full of wonder, leaving the world mysterious, waiting for a morning uncertain to open eyes again, while the memory remains timeless within the heart.